Please welcome to the stage Bloomberg's Jumana Bersetchi.
Good morning. Sabah al-khair. Your Highness, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to the 5th Qatar Economic Forum powered by Bloomberg, held under the patronage of His Highness Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al-Thani, the Emir of the State of Qatar. أصحاب السمو السيدات والسادة أهلا بكم.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Qatar Economic Forum. Please allow me to thank you for this opportunity to have the 5th edition of Qatar Economic Forum, an opportunity to gather dignitaries and experts from the world to highlight the motors of the economy. Thank you, Your Highness, for your presence and your participation.
To gather global leaders here in Doha under your leadership to discuss the key themes shaping the global economy. I think you will all agree that President Trump's visit to the region was momentous. It positions Qatar and the Middle East at the heart of the global economy like never before. Deals worth billions were signed, deals that will shift global trade and the flow of technology for the next decade. The Qatar Economic Forum is the first global convening since the President's visit, giving all of us here a unique opportunity to discuss its ramifications for the world. Over the next 3 days, global business and government leaders will discuss policy, finance, investment, and routes to shared growth. We'll talk inflation, trade, energy, supply chains, and discuss the new rules for cross-border investment. Together, let's question assumptions and exchange and debate ideas so that we leave here with clear, actionable steps. Now, please note that simultaneous interpretation devices are on your seats.
You can use the translation devices in front of you.
Our sponsors for making this event possible. Thank you all for your generous support. And with that, it is my great pleasure to welcome the founder of Bloomberg and Bloomberg Philanthropies, Mike Bloomberg.
Well, thank you, Jamara, and good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 5th Annual Qatar Economic Forum here in Doha. And let me begin by thanking His Highness, the Emir of the State of Qatar, for welcoming us here and for being with us this morning. It's safe to say this forum would not be possible without his continued partnership and the partnership of the Qatar government. So let's thank them all with a big round of applause. To the many heads of state and government, business executives, every delegate and speaker, and all of the viewers watching online around the world, thank you all for joining us. We're honored. We've assembled a group of over 2,500 government and business leaders from more than 90 countries with many different perspectives on the volatile times that we are experiencing both in markets and in geopolitics. And no matter how a person gets the news these days, whether it is on Bloomberg Television, the Bloomberg Terminal, Bloomberg Radio, or Bloomberg.com, or Bloomberg Business Week, it's clear that we're witnessing profound economic disruptions. Government instability is driving market volatility. Investors and business leaders are dealing with the fallout of a global trade war, tariff and regulatory uncertainty, and continued military conflicts. Meanwhile, the effects of the climate crisis are growing more costly and more deadly by every day. Now, the good news is it's a time of great risks, but also a time of great opportunities. At Bloomberg, part of our job is not just supporting our customers through uncertainty, but also helping them grow their way out of it. And to do that, we're constantly enhancing our products to provide decision makers with better data, better analytics, and better insight. Another ways we can help our customers is by hosting the kind of dialogue that can lead to action. And here in Qatar, we've found a great partner. Through all the upheaval, Qatar continues to be a positive force for stability and long-term thinking, including on energy. It ranks among the top exporters of liquefied natural gas, while it also invests billions in renewable energy, both here and abroad. And that kind of forward-looking economic leadership is something more countries would do well to emulate. And in a world where people are increasingly prone to shout at one another or take social media to air their grievances in public, Qatar is the place where people come to talk and to listen. Every time I come to Doha, it's easy to see the commercial progress in the physical environment, the new office buildings, new housing, new hotels, and new museums. The drive and ambition here is extraordinary, and they are on display all around us. What people don't see are the quiet corners, the rooms where behind the scenes the hard work of business, partnership, and diplomacy gets done. Even when the parties fundamentally disagree, even when they fundamentally dislike each other, Qatar is finding ways to help them communicate, which is helping to make the world a better place. Over the next 3 days, we want to tap into that spirit of collaboration as we conduct difficult and important conversations. The road to 2030 transforms the global economy in our forum's organizing theme. And our next speaker is instrumental in leading that transformation here in Qatar and the Gulf. His background is investing, stability, and diplomacy, all giving him a valued perspective on the issues we're going to be discussing this week. And we are honored that he is officially opening the forum once again this year. So please join me in giving him a warm welcome now, His Excellency, the Prime Minister, Sheikh Mohammed Al-Thani.
Thank you, Mike, for your kind introduction. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim.
In the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate. His Highness Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al-Thani, Emir of the State of Qatar, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. May the peace of God be upon you. Welcome to Doha, the capital of our state, which has become a destination for international fora, an international center that gathers decision makers and intellectuals to build bridges of dialogue and cooperation. Qatar Economic Forum this year is being held amid transformations in the global economy and politics, which highlights the need for dialogue platforms gathering decision makers, entrepreneurs, innovators, and intellectuals in order to define the upcoming opportunities of investment and face the challenges, particularly the necessity to guarantee stability and growth. Excellencies, the unprecedented humanitarian crisis in Gaza is still ongoing, despite the efforts of the state of Qatar, Egypt, the US. And despite the efforts that we are exerting, however, we are still witnessing how the opportunities to de-escalate are going to waste. When the Israeli-American Idan Alexander was released, we considered that this would allow for stopping the crisis. However, the retaliation was further raids that led to the death of hundreds of innocents. This irresponsible attack is undermining any chance of peace. Yet, we are committed to continue our diplomatic efforts with our partners to put an end to this war and to release all hostages and prisoners in order to equally stop the struggles of the Palestinian people in Gaza. With regards to Syria, the decision to lift the American sanctions imposed on this sister country consists an important step in the right direction. We look forward to additional similar steps. This is a clear message to the region and the world that the priority must be to give a real, complete opportunity for peoples getting out of conflicts in order for them to build better futures. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, economic growth and political stability are intertwined. You cannot achieve one without the other. Based on this, the state of Qatar adopts an efficient diplomatic approach based on productive work in order to solve conflicts, knowing that peace is essential for any sustainable development. We believe that every diplomatic effort exerted is an investment in a safer and more stable future. When we see a young person in Gaza finishing their studies or a family in Syria returning, we understand the importance of stability on the life of people. Dear ladies and gentlemen, in Qatar we look towards a diversified economy based on knowledge and innovation, accompanying the technological advancements, and we aspire to have Qatar a worldwide center for investment, for business, based on trust and confidence. And we hope that Qatar is always a trustworthy partner, whether in energy or investment, just like it is in diplomacy. From this, we translate our vision into a reality through diversifying our investments abroad in order to enhance the equilibrium and contribute in a sustainable economy. The Qatar Investment Authority implements its vision through strategies across the world. This year we have important investments in the US, in Africa and in China. These initiatives reflect our trust in the market dynamics, particularly emerging markets and their future potential. Locally, the Qatari economy continues its positive performance. We have a real growth of 2.4% in 2024, and our GDP has increased. This growth is the result of progress in non-oil sectors that have grown by 3.4% annually, which is a clear indicator to stable progress towards the growth or the goals of our national strategy. By 2024, the direct foreign investments has reached 9.9 million Qatari riyal, which affirms the increased trust of foreign investors in the Qatar economy. Accompanying this momentum, Qatar continues updating its regulation and framework in order for the environment to be more attractive for investors. In this context, we are glad today to announce the launch of the first program of motives for investors, targeting strategic sectors including production in advanced technology and logistics. This package is an important step to increase development in main sectors that are pillars of the future of our economy. In addition to the industry, we have launched this year SMESMA project, which is one of the most or the largest entertainment projects in the region. It is essential in the tourism and real estate sectors, and it is a driver for comprehensive development. In terms of innovation and digitalization, Qatar has affirmed its stage as it has welcomed in February 2025 the second Web Summit with the participation of more than 25,000 people from 124 countries. The Web Summit has created a communication forum between the emerging centers in Asia and Africa, in addition to sovereign funds and large companies. This once again confirms the place of Qatar being a place of linking, and Qatar has also welcomed MWC. Will be welcoming, in November, the MWC, placing Qatar on the digital economic map. To accompany this development and to participate effectively in it, Qatar will launch a new project which will be revealed this year. These achievements altogether reflect the commitment of Qatar to guarantee its place as an economy and investment hub. It enshrines its seriousness in having a future of diversity, of innovation and sustainability. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Qatar seeks to play its role in an economy a global economy that is more fair, just, and that is human-centered. We look forward to have Qatar a place of discussion, of debate and dialogue in an environment that allows for peace, stability and investment. We look for a mix of diplomacy, growth, and we look forward to focusing on human dignity. I thank you for your presence and I wish you a fruitful forum. We look forward to productive discussions in the sessions of this forum. We look forward to new partnerships that guarantee development, sustainable development in our region and the world. May the peace of God be upon you.
Please welcome back to the stage His Excellency Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdulrahman bin Jassim Al-Thani, Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs for the State of Qatar, for a conversation with Bloomberg's Jumana Bersechi.
Your Excellency, thank you so much, and thank you for the speech. President Trump was in the region last week. It was the first time a U.S. president has paid a visit to Qatar since 2003. How significant was this visit for the Gulf, do you think? And also, how do you think this president, his approach to the region, differs from his predecessors?
Well, I believe that the President visit first trip to the GCC region, visiting Saudi, Qatar, and UAE, has been a great demonstration for the potential of that region. And this sent a very strong message to the entire world that there is a very high potential in that region. This region is flourishing. This region has a lot to do when it comes to contribute to the future technology and the revolution of artificial intelligence and the need, of course, for power. Basically, we have had a great visit, and I believe this is equivalent to the rest of the countries in the GCC. During that visit, we had a wide range of topics that's been discussed, whether it's on the regional security, on the future economic cooperation between the two countries, and how to untap the potential between the two countries. These topics actually has varied, whether it's how to partner in artificial intelligence, how to partner in energy, and how to expand also in being a critical and a vital part of the supply chain for the United States economy, which is the leading economy in the world. I believe this is, was very much perceived in a positive way by the region. And of course, we know that the policy varies from one administration to another. We are glad to see that Middle East and GCC in particular is a priority for this administration, and we believe that there is a lot of potential for both of us in the region and the United States that we can untap in the next few years. And also, I think that one of the key elements of the President's visit is making sure that the situation in this region remain stabilized. And we have seen what a delicate period that we are going through in that region, whether it's on their talks, on the US talks with Iran, or the situation in Gaza and the changes that happened in Syria. And we are hoping that these kind of engagements will lead us to a point where we can have all these conflicts settled and hopefully being more focused on the prosperity of the region.
President Trump has been labeled a transactional president. He certainly likes to do deals. He's written a book about the art of the deal, and he likes things of value, especially if they come free. I want to ask you about the gift of this Boeing jet that Qatar want to give to the president to use as interim Air Force One. It's been met with a lot of controversy back home. What was the purpose? What is the purpose of this gift? And is it, as some critics say, an opportunity for Qatar to gain influence with this administration?
Well, look, actually, you know, we have seen that there was a lot of, you know, controversy that's being created out of this, what I call it an exchange between two countries, and basically the relationship that we have between Qatar and the United States is a very institutional relationship, and it witnessed different administration, and the institutional relationship remain very strong and at the backbone of this partnership. The plain story is a Ministry of Defense to Department of Defense transaction, which is basically done in full transparency and very legally, and it's part of the cooperation that we've been always doing together for decades. For example, the airlifting in Afghanistan is something that we have almost 80% of that done by our air forces. The security deployment of the United States during the World Cup to support our efforts was done by the United States, and I see it as a normal, you know, a normal thing that happens between allies. And basically, I don't know why people, they are thinking about it, that this is considered as a bribery or considered as something that Qatar wants to buy an influence with this administration. I don't see any, honestly, valid reason for that. And I believe that there is a huge issue in misconception or, unfortunately, some spoiler who are trying to portray Qatar as a country that it tries to buy its way. And I believe if you look at the track record, at least for the last 10 years, whenever is some scoop coming out in the media and trying to put Qatar under a spotlight, that Qatar is bribing to get the World Cup, or Qatar is bribing the EU Parliament, or whatever, until like the end Qatar is trying to bribe the Prime Minister of Israel. I'm sure that, it does tell you something, that for the last 10 years, none of these cases has stand or had any proof that Qatar has done anything wrong. We are a country that would like to have a strong partnership and strong friendship, and anything that we provide to any country, it's provided out of respect for this partnership, and it's a two-way relationship. It's mutually beneficial for Qatar and for the United States, and I believe everybody acknowledges this. I think that we need to overcome this stereotype of seeing Qatar as a small Arab nation because it's gas-rich. It cannot find its way without buying it with money. It's really a misconception that hurts a lot, not our reputation, but the reputation also of other countries and the institutions.
Is the controversy worth it, though, if it means that there's going to be further congressional scrutiny of all of Qatar's dealings now with the U.S.?
Well, there is actually nothing have been done by us under the table, or like we are trying to do like a covert operation. It's a Ministry of Defense to Department of Defense. There is a proper legal review is now conducted between the two departments, and nothing has happened yet, actually. Our intention is to have a very clear exchange that the U.S. is in need for to accelerate, a temporary Air Force One. Qatar has the ability to provide this. We stepped up, and basically a lot of nations has gifted the U.S. Many things. I am not comparing that to the Statue of Liberty, but I don't know if this is like sounded a little bit maybe strange for the U.S. because it's coming from a small Arab nation. I think that this has played some way a factor in this, but I'm hoping that people in the United States and even the politicians over there, they look at us as a friend, as a partner, as a reliable partner, that we've been always there for the U.S. whenever we were needed, whether it's in the war against terror, whether it's in freeing American hostages from all around the world. It's not something that we've been doing to buy an influence, but this is a duty on us as a partner, as an ally of the United States, and as there is a duty for the United States toward Qatar.
I want to turn to regional geopolitics. Yesterday, the Israeli Prime Minister says that Israel are now carrying out operations with the purpose of taking over the Gaza Strip. They will carry out an unprecedented attack on Hamas, that is a quote. The war is clearly entering into a new phase after a ceasefire that was negotiated earlier this year. Qatar played a pivotal role in that. It lapsed in March. The death toll continues to go up. There's still what's thought to be 20 hostages still alive in the Gaza Strip. There's a humanitarian crisis going on there. What hope is there now for a lasting ceasefire, Your Excellency?
Well, it's unfortunate that we've been seeing the situation unfolding in this way, and it's becoming very frustrating for everyone, and especially for us here in Qatar. We've been there from the beginning trying to mediate and trying to get to a deal where it alleviates the suffering of the Palestinian people in Gaza and freeing the hostages and bringing them back to their family, and trying to bring a path that will create a peaceful environment and security for both people. And that's basically what we were aiming. And what I think that the last year and a half now has shown you that the only way forward is through negotiations. And unfortunately that sometimes, or many of the times, these negotiations being sabotaged by political games with a very narrow vision, and it's just being postponed. One of the examples, we had the first deal that freed more than 100 Israeli hostages in November 23. It collapsed in 1 week. Then we had the second deal that's been based on a framework that's agreed on December 23, and we couldn't announce it, or we couldn't finalize it until January 25. That states very clearly that this deal should include multiple phases, that we have to do everything we can to avoid to return to the war, and ensuring that all the hostages will be freed, and there is a withdrawal from Gaza Strip, and there is a clear way forward for the Gazan people to alleviate their situation. This deal has collapsed on 2nd of March, and we have seen how the situation has been unfolding since then, and the blockade on Gaza for now more than 60 days. And we are hearing also some irresponsible statements about the humanitarian situation over there, about the way of distributing these aids and distributing food in form of meals and calculated calories for pre-qualified and pre-screened people. I think all these things that are happening has been unprecedented in our world today, and it shouldn't be acceptable for the international community. Yes, yet we have seen that unfortunately the Israeli government is carrying it out with impunity. Now we continue our efforts despite everything and every attempt to sabotage our efforts and try to also blackmail us and continuing attacking us, while we were the only country that's helping together with Egypt and United States. And we have just that this is just making us more determined to bring stability to the region, to end the war in Gaza, to free all the hostages and to bring them back to their family, and to provide security for both people. The rounds of negotiations that took place in Doha in the past couple of weeks unfortunately didn't lead us anywhere yet, because there is a fundamental gap between the two parties, which is one party is looking for a partial deal that might or have the possibility to lead to a comprehensive deal, and the other party is looking just for one-off deal and to end the war and to get all the hostages out. And we couldn't bridge this fundamental gap with whatever proposals we have provided, given the past experience of the first deal that it collapsed. And basically we are stuck in a situation that if this operation is starting, is just going to postpone to postpone the diplomatic conclusion of the war, which will end only diplomatically from our point of view, and will just cost us a death toll on the Palestinian side and also on the hostages side. Just, I wanted to add one very important point to this. The delicacy of that situation in the region right now is critical. And basically, we have seen that the continuation of this campaign in this way and this behavior, and it's not only in Gaza, but Gaza, West Bank, Lebanon, Syria, is something becoming unbearable. Yet you have seen that all of us as governments, as countries, we are calling for peace, we are calling for peaceful resolutions, and nothing is stopping this kind of behavior.
Yeah.
That will only add anger to the people in that region. This will add legitimacy for non-state actors, and is just going to fuel the narrative of extremism and terrorism.
In President Trump's speech last week in Riyadh, he talks about the birth of a new Middle East, the economic transformation, and also the Gulf states playing an increasingly influential diplomatic and mediation role, and the prospect of regional stability. Can there actually be regional stability in the absence of a solution to the Palestinian and Israeli conflict that has been going on for decades?
Well, we believe that this conflict is a core for the regional stability, and we hope that there will be a chance sometime soon. It requires a strong leadership from the Palestinian side, from the Arab side, and from the Israeli side, because there will never be a deal without a compromises between all the parties, that ensuring that there are conditions that can be created for the people to coexist together. This region has been, for centuries, with a beautiful social fabric that has different backgrounds and different ethnicity and different religions. Unfortunately, it's been drained with these ancient wars and proxies that evolved over the last few decades. I cannot recall since I was born that there was a moment of stability in the region when we talk about the overall. We are blessed that the GCC was protected except during Iraq war, but since we grew up on just conflicts after another.
We've got a couple of minutes, but I do want to ask you, because you were in Tehran over the weekend, how likely is it that you think we will get to an Iran-US nuclear deal by the end of this year?
I believe there is a positive momentum. We had a very good conversation with the President Trump when he was here. We see him as a president who tried to talk to everyone, which is something that we are very much encouraged. And also he's trying to avoid any conflict or any escalation. And this determination in itself, it's showing leadership and political will. On the other side, on Iran, we have seen and sensed the same positivity. Of course, Oman is leading the mediation, and we are trying to support their efforts. I have suggested that after the visit of President Trump to have a trilateral engagement with the Iranians and our Omani colleagues, and we were discussing ideas that can bridge the gaps between the two parties. We hope that those ideas will work. The last thing that we want in that region, a nuclear race or another round of escalation that's next to our countries.
Final question on the Qatar economy. We've had the World Cup bump, you could call it, and of course you have big visions of what you want to achieve in the next few years. What is the plan the next 5 years by 2030?
Well, it's a very ambitious plan. I have a friend who once told me that the World Cup was like an IPO for Qatar, and I believe this was thanks to God that this was a very successful IPO, and it's been oversubscribed, and we have seen the growth in many sectors after that. Basically, Qatar is trying to work on a transformation plan where we transform our economy into more being diversified, with a diversified base internally. And we've been talking about this for the last 25 years, and we've been working toward that objective. We are focusing on developing different sectors, whether it's on the manufacturing, on the logistics, on the education, on the healthcare, and the tourism, and technology. And we have seen the technology revolution right now that's happening, and we have seen that this technology revolution is not only happening away in the world, but countries like UAE is leading in artificial intelligence, or Saudi leading in data centers. And we are trying to be part of this ecosystem and being a complementary for this region. And basically we see that the potential is huge, the capability is there, and Qatar has successfully built global brands in the last few decades. Qatar Airways is one of the main examples, when you see that you have a leading airline being nominated #1 for the last few years. This is something making us proud, and we would like to see more and more brands coming out of Qatar like this.
Your Excellency, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage His Excellency Saad Sharida Al-Kabi, Minister of State for Energy Affairs for the State of Qatar and President and CEO of Qatar Energy, and Ryan M. Lance, Chairman and CEO of ConocoPhillips, for a conversation with Bloomberg's Francine Lacroix.
Everyone, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. Now, we have 17 minutes to talk about the energy complex. Minister, let's start with you. Thank you so much for, to you and your beautiful country for hosting us. Now, with the visit of President Trump last week, there was a lot going on, of course, in Qatar. We saw huge commitments from the countries he visited, including this one. Were you under pressure to make a deal in the energy sector for President Trump?
First, it's great to be here at Bloomberg's with all of you, with Ryan and yourself again. Regarding the visit of President Trump, of course, it was a historic visit. We were very thrilled to have him here as the first sitting president to visit Qatar. Pressuring us on doing deals, I think, as you know, President Trump is a businessman, first and foremost, and he understands business very well. We had several deals that were done in Qatar during his visit. So there was the energy sector. If we look at the energy sector, we had a project in Qatar. For the last 70 years, we've had American companies here. So we've had several projects, Northfield East, Northfield South, where Ryan is a partner. These are all commercial projects that have American presence. We have 2 projects in the U.S., the largest single investment in LNG export facility in the U.S., the largest ethane cracker in the world in the U.S., about $30 billion project. So these are all commercially viable projects that we're doing. From my vantage point as the chairman of Qatar Airways, we had a tender for buying airplanes that we need for the expansion of Qatar Airways, and Boeing gave us the best deal. It was better than Airbus, and we went ahead with that because it was the most commercially viable. If you look at our investments in QIA, we have already made a lot of investments in the US, and we're making more, and these are all commercial deals that we're doing. Our military are buying equipment that they need for their military. So regarding pressuring us to do deals, I would say no. I think we're happy to do deals with American companies because they provide a win-win solution for us. And all the deals that we do, like in the energy sector, are 25, 30-year deals. So they have to survive different administrations, CEOs, and so on. So I would say pressuring, no. But we're happy to do deals where they are mutually beneficial.
Minister, you mentioned you're chairman of Qatar Airways. You had some pretty incredible profits. So how do you see that going? How did you achieve them? And actually, how do you see the introduction of Riyadh airlines in the region affecting your business?
Of course, we attribute the excellent profit to several factors. We have excellent staff, excellent leadership. So all the crew members, the pilots, the ground staff, everybody working in the company has contributed. Of course, first and foremost are the loyal clients to Qatar Airways that made this also possible. And also, this is a cyclical business. Everybody's doing well in the airline business, and we just need to keep going with the same rhythm to ensure that we continuously can have good profits. Regarding Riyadh Airline, I think we're very happy for our brothers and colleagues in Saudi Arabia that they are embarking on this expansion in the airline business. It's a huge country, Saudi Arabia, whether it's size of the country or size of population, and I think it's overdue to have additional airlines and airline products in Saudi Arabia, and if there's anything that we can do to support Saudi Arabia from Qatar Airways, we'd be happy to do that, but we wish them all the success, and I think it's very much needed for Saudi Arabia and the region.
Ryan Lance, President Trump pledged to drill, baby, drill. Is it happening? And if it isn't, why not?
Well, I think the president's got a unique ability to boil things down to a bit of a bumper sticker. I think the drill, baby, drill, people get fixated on how many rigs are running in the U.S. and is that representing a drill, baby, drill. I think it's a broader strategy that the president is trying to articulate around taking the natural resources that are endowed to the U.S. and really continue that growth and development. So it's got multiple dimensions. It's permitting reform to speed things up. It's more infrastructure being built, high voltage transmission lines, it's gas pipelines. It's eliminating the LNG pause that the prior administration put in. So I think it's a statement that articulates a broader strategy that wants to use the endowed resources that we have in the United States to continue that growth and that development and continue to be able to import and export energy that the full world needs today.
Break-evens for U.S. shale, I think, on average, pre-trade wars and tariffs, were about $65 a barrel. What's the new break-even level now that the cost of pipes have gone up, but also drilling has gone up because of tariffs?
Yeah, I don't think the break-even probably hasn't moved a lot. I think long-term, if you're going to see oil prices in a comfortable range, maybe in the 70s or 65 to 75, we'll still see continued modest growth out of the U.S. Now, what happens at sub 60 is we start to plateau in the U.S. and even in the 50s probably start to decline the production a little bit. So there is kind of a equilibrium place even in the U.S. that allows the shale to continue its maturity and its growth, but we see plateauing production, probably the end of this decade coming out of the U.S. unless there's going to be another technological breakthrough in our business. And don't bet against our industry because we're, as His Excellency knows, we're pretty good at trying to figure out how to get more out of the subsurface endowment that we have in our country.
Minister, most of Qatar's LNG sales are also linked, of course, to oil prices. How has the oil's slump this year affected Qatar?
The oil slump, I would like to add to just what Ryan mentioned. In general, all oil companies look at their revenue and look at their capital expenditure over the next few years. And the way you can spend more capital, there are two things. There's capital to sustain. People don't talk about sustaining your actual production, which gets more expensive with time to maintain it and drill additional wells and so on. So you need a lot of revenue for that. In addition to that, the additional capex to expand and to keep additional reserves coming. And you need, in general, you'd need somewhere in the range of $70 to $80 in my view, to be able to sustain the current production and increase. And when you look at the U.S., for example, I mean, one of the things that came out of the visit is a better understanding of, with my counterpart, Chris Wright, Secretary Chris Wright from the U.S. and the colleagues that came with President Trump. They have an ambition of growing their power to for an additional 100 gigawatts of power. And that's for AI, that's for additional industry that they want to bring back into the U.S. All that needs power. And if you don't have additional investment, to sustain that power, from gas and other sources, they've opened up coal and others, is going to damage that ambition, if you will. So I think if oil prices decline below 60, there definitely is going to be a decline in investment, and all the requirements for power are not going to be fulfilled. Worldwide, not only in the U.S.
And, Mr., are you committed to the oil price link, no matter what?
Yeah, I mean, the oil price link, I mean, some of our products are we produce oil, we produce condensate that's associated with gas, and some of our gas is linked to crude. But, of course, if crude comes down, it affects the entire, whether it's petrochemicals, whether it's oil, whether it's gas, fertilizer, it affects the whole thing.
Ryan, I mean, to the Minister's point, do you think Donald Trump's push for more energy production in the U.S., but also faster permitting of LNG products, will affect the market?
Well, we certainly hope so. If you think about the market in the LNG side, it's probably growing 1% to 2% compound annual growth. So it's a market that's growing from about 400 or so million tons today to something probably north of 700 million tons over the course of the next decade and beyond. So it's going to take a lot of growth. It's going to take growth in Qatar. It's going to take growth in the United States, the two biggest suppliers in the world, to satisfy the enormous amount of energy growth that's coming. It's going to be power, as His Excellency has talked about, around the whole world, not only in the United States, but around the world as well. So that's coming. And unfortunately, we're endowed with a very large gas resource, as is Qatar, with the large North Field. And we're proud to be a partner here, and proud to be putting our investment in the U.S. for more liquefaction capacity and exporting that product to around the world as well.
Minister, where does potentially higher U.S. exports leave major LNG producers like Qatar?
Again?
Where, if the U.S. exports more LNG, where does it leave Qatar?
No, I think, we are the biggest supply that's going to come from the U.S. next year. We're going to start our LNG export by the end of this year and really start the full production sometime in the next year. But the first LNG that will come from our Golden Pass LNG, which is the largest single export project in one go that's built in the U.S., is going to have 18 million tons of production. We own 70% of that. So we will be exporters from the U.S. I think the U.S. volumes are going to go to certain markets that are mostly Europe, South America, and our volume will predominantly be serving Asia. That it's difficult for the U.S., I think, to reach, or the entire volume to go to Asia. But in general, I think we need all that volume. It's us, it's the U.S., I think some Australian volume and others to care. You're going to have 1.5 to 2 billion people on this earth in the next 20 to 30 years, and you have 1 billion people around the world that don't have basic electricity. So the need for electricity and power is huge. So we're not worried at all about having a supply glut or anything like that.
And I think I would add that people immediately go to the competition between the U.S. and Qatar. It's really not. It's a cooperation because of the different market access that both countries have to the growing demand. So it's a cooperation. It's really not a competition.
But how do you see this? I mean, when you look, Ryan, at the impact of Shell's new model of financial discipline or investor return, how is this different this time to previous downturns in 2015 and 2020?
Well, I think the balance sheets of the companies in the business is so much better. We've gone through consolidation, and mergers and acquisitions, and the net result of that is the balance sheets of all our companies are in much better shape to withstand some of these downturns. Our company in particular, you know, we've got a pretty deep inventory of low-cost supply resources, and that's what we're trying to drive, so you can be profitable through the ups and the downs in this business. They're invariably going to be there. If you don't have a plan to deal with volatility, you'll be dead in this business. Yeah. So, you know, you got to have that, and it starts with a very strong balance sheet and being able to invest through the cycles with a very long-term global view of supply-demand, which we have, and it's very constructive.
And Minister, I know you've also been in talk with buyers such as China and India for a fresh round of LNG supply deals. Is there a sticky point? When can we have more news on that?
No, I think we're, you know, after this talk here, I'm flying to China. We have the World Gas Conference in China that I'm speaking in tomorrow morning, and I'm meeting all the buyers in China. We have a great relationship with China. We are the largest supplier to China, and they are the biggest buyer by far, by more than double, you know, anybody else that's buying from Qatar. So we have a very good relationship. They are discussing with us additional volume. India is discussing with us additional volume, but we have multiple countries that are discussing with us additional volume. And these negotiations take time, and some go a little bit further. I think what you're alluding to is some articles that came out regarding sticking points and so on. You always have sticking points with all negotiations, whether it's with India, China, or anybody else. Everybody wants a better deal from both sides.
Everybody always wants a better deal, right? Let's face it. Ryan, when do you think U.S. shale production will peak?
Tell me the price. So if the price is in the 50s, we probably have, if it's sustained price. So I'm talking about not just what's happening today, but if it sustains itself over a long period of time, U.S. shale is probably, it's peaked and will start declining in the 50s. It probably plateaus for quite a while in the 60s. And actually, if you get back to sort of that comfortable range that His Excellency talked about, there's continued growth in the U.S. shale. So we believe it could go in the 70s, it could go over 14 million barrels a day from its current level of low 13.3, 13.4. So it really depends on what that sustained price is going to look like. If we have a longer term price like we're seeing today, it's going to flatten out.
Minister, Qatar was also amongst, you know, the first GCC states to invest in gas exploration and production around the world. So what new investments do you see on the horizon from Qatar?
Yeah, we are one of the largest, if not the largest company around the world in owning exploration blocks. Exploration has a 10% success rate, so if you drill 10 wells, one is successful. So we have been successful in some regions, but this is a continuous drive to explore more, and we're really participating in new exploration blocks around the world. We have had some successes, and I'm very optimistic about the future, but it takes time.
How much LNG is Qatar Energy trading currently? Is this something that...
LNG? Trading.
Trading. There's a lot of excitement actually in the market about
Trading was something we started just a few years back. What we saw is there was money left on the table, if you will. Traders from around the world were buying Qatari, you know, we have some spot cargoes sometimes, and they would buy our cargo and make money off it, and we have the capability and can actually you know, establish a trading organization. So we established a trading organization. Currently we are trading around 10 million tons of LNG, physical trading of 10 million tons of LNG. The mandate is more than 50% needs to be non-Qatari volume, which is the case today. The ambition is by 2030 to reach somewhere in the range of 30 to 40 million tons of non-Qatari LNG traded by our trading group.
But will you also reserve a portion of the output from North Field East for spot trading? And how big?
I think, you know, we're going to be producing 160 million tons of LNG as projects that we're participating in. If you include the U.S., we're at 77 million tons today. We have 70 ships today. We're adding 128. So all that will be really under the control of our trading organization, where they can trade spot trade some of that volume. Not all of the volume will be locked up in long-term deals, but we'll have plenty to deal with.
Okay. Ryan Lanza, in the minute that we have left, how do you see demand over the energy industry actually developing over the next year or two?
Well, I think we're pretty constructive in the demand. It's probably dropped off a little bit with all of the economic uncertainty in the world today. So demand grows probably 700,000 to 800,000 barrels a day this year. But long term, I think you can expect around 1 million barrels a day of growth. And we really don't see the end of that coming into this decade, into the next decade. So that's why we're constructive long term. There's a little bit of spare capacity on the supply side, which has caused the price to be down a little bit with some economic uncertainty. But the long-term growth projections are pretty healthy for this business.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for a good conversation on global energy supplies and security. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We are probably in a recession right now.
There's no question the uncertainty slows down growth.
And we're going to make deals, but they're going to be fair deals. They're not going to be rip-off deals.
In the fourth quarter, you will feel the power of Donald Trump's economy.
The danger of recession looms bigger.
Please welcome to the stage His Excellency Ali bin Ahmed Al-Kuwari, Minister of Finance for the State of Qatar. His Excellency Faisal Al-Ibrahim, Minister of Economy and Planning for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And His Excellency Mehmet Şimşek, Minister of Treasury and Finance for the Republic of Türkiye, for a conversation with Bloomberg's Stephanie Flanders.
Excellencies, we don't have very much time. Thank you very much for being here. I think Donald Trump would be really enjoying this conference so far. He would really like that we have begun every session with a question so far about his trip, and I'm afraid I'm going to be no exception, because we still have a lot of questions and details to think about from that visit last week. Excellency Minister Al-Kuwari, we had very big numbers talked about in terms of the deals that Qatar was going to do with the US. I think there was 243 billion, but the President also talked about an economic exchange worth $1.2 trillion. That's 5 times Qatar's GDP. Are these plausible numbers? Do we think that this is, did you just engage in a sort of bidding war, or should we take these numbers seriously?
Well, I mean, thank you, Stephanie. Thank you. First of all, I mean, it was a great visit by His Excellency the President, to the region. I think this is a big statement, as Sheikh Mohammed said, for the region, and recognition how important the region economically, politically, and geoeconomically and geopolitically, and from a stability. And this is, I mean, something that really we take it, also, and we appreciate it. From I mean, deals perspective, I think I mean, there was the $160 billion deal, with the Boeing. This is with Qatar Airways, and this is a normal, I mean, renewal of airplanes. This is part of the airline business. If you go with any airlines, this is normal, progressions. And the airlines, they do it over a long period of times, and also they have their own capital, their own access to finance, and they do like many deals, like buying and selling and lease buyback. I mean, so it's a very normal deals, and this is not something that we see it, And Boeing is an excellent aircraft, with the GE, engine. So it's in line with the Qatar Airways, strategies, in line with the, and the other deals is in line with our participation. The $1.2 trillion you talked about we are talking about economic partnership. And when we talk about economic partnership, it has a win-win situation. It's the U.S. companies doing business in Qatar, Qatar is doing business with the US, trade, and over some period of time. So it's not something abnormal. I mean, QIA continue to invest in the US. The US is an excellent market, is giving good return for QIAs in line with their investment strategies. Looking to the trade, again, US enjoying a huge surplus, with Qatar for many years. Is one of, US is the biggest import partner for Qatar. So these things are really normal course of businesses, course of actions, and the US being the US, it's the biggest, economic partner for Qatar. So I don't see this as like a big number, but this is a very normal course of actions, course of businesses, and course of commercial activities. It's a purely commercial, purely needs. Our defense, partnership with the US is huge, and again, this is something that we benefit, as part. This is part of our, beefing up our military here in Qatar. So it's really something very normal, and we really value the partnership with the US, and it's very significant.
And just to quickly follow up, I know that the QIA is going to have more and more firepower as you ramp up the LNG exports. What are the key priorities for your international investments?
Yeah, QIA, they have their own investment strategies based on region, based on sectors. Of course, the priority sectors, today is technology, AI, pharmaceutical, infrastructure, real estate, and they review these strategies every year and they change it accordingly. And as I say, today the US is the biggest opportunities are in the US, in terms of these businesses, but they continue to spread around as well. And these strategies get reviewed every now and then to make sure they are aligned and taking advantage of the opportunities, yet mitigating risks.
And Excellency Minister Al-Ibrahim, we had some even bigger numbers talked about in terms of Saudi deals last week. But I guess many people would say the biggest gift that the kingdom has given to President Trump in recent months is a lower oil price, and it is, at its current rate, is much lower than the kingdom needs to cover the external obligations, and certainly well below what you need to balance your domestic budget. So I just want, how are you thinking about how you're going to bridge that gap if the oil price stays roughly where it is?
So thank you, Stephanie. It's important to keep in mind that what we're undertaking in Vision 2030 and beyond Vision 2030 is a long-term, big-picture plan that is all about restructuring the Saudi economy. And I think other Gulf countries are going through something similar. We're doing that because we're investing in resilience, institutional resilience. This means that we will deploy the capital in the way that helps us get these returns, but help us also get the momentum to restructure. If you look at oil specifically, of course, our budgets are no longer driven by oil. Today, they're driven by our priorities. On the energy markets and oil, we've always been solving for long-term market stability. That guarantees that investments will continue to flow to provide the right kind of supply that the global economy needs. And of course, as part of that is OPEC plus discipline. So if you ask us 6 months ago, 1 year ago, etc., we'll always tell you that we're always ready for scenarios, multiple scenarios, and we have the buffers. We have the long-term fiscal planning and medium-term frameworks that help us adjust depending on what scenario actually plays out. But we're always thinking about not the next 12 months, but a longer-term horizon. And that's what most of the GC countries are doing as well. The GC countries and the economies are bright spots or jewels in the global economy today because of the ability to plan long-term, because of the ability to deliver long-term, and because of this institutional capability that's growing, coupled with leadership's vision, people's determination. But that institutional capability is helping us ensure that we continuously evolve and become agile.
And it is true that in the past, you have been agile, you've responded to periods of lower oil prices by cutting the domestic projects. I guess now we look at the pipeline of projects you have, things like the World Cup. they are commitments that are hard to reduce. So do you still have that flexibility when you have this enormous pipeline of committed spending and big projects?
So this transformation is anchored in discipline, but also bold action. We've prioritized our spend for many reasons, predominantly how do we accelerate our diversification, how do we continue to empower human capital, and to continue to build institutional capabilities. Of course, a subset of that has to do with public commitments, global commitments, such as that of the World Cup and Expo 2030, and so on and so forth, and that's all in our priority list.
And Minister, Excellency Minister Şimşek, we were talking earlier, the biggest thing that happened last week during Donald Trump's trip to the region, at least where Turkey is concerned, was the lifting of sanctions on Syria, and indeed your president was on the phone call. We've also seen the PKK give up on 40 years of war against the Turkish state. What's the peace dividend or the economic dividend that comes from that for Turkey?
Well, peace dividend will be great.
Just hold on, I think you lost your mic. There you go.
It's not working? All right, I have a new microphone. So peace dividend is likely to be massive. First of all, having a stable, peaceful, and prospering Syria on its own is a huge gain for the region and, of course, for Turkey, because we've got 911 kilometers of border with Syria. So clearly that is going to help in a big way, because conflicts drag you down, and as we address the conflicts, as we rebuild functioning states, it's huge boost for the entire region. So that has been a welcome move. But going back to one of the components of you've highlighted, the PKK has waged almost a 50-year war against Türkiye. But last week they have agreed to disband and disarm. This is also huge because according to a study, including the opportunity cost, we have wasted almost $1.8 trillion over the past 5 decades combating terror. Now, of course, the peace dividend will be huge in terms of channeling resources to more productive areas for development, for progress. So in that sense, these two developments are going to be huge in terms of geopolitics no longer being a drag, but actually being a source of leverage to help Turkey move up.
And foreign investors would be hearing that and would feel positive about it, but at the same time they have in their head the detention of Mayor Imamoglu in March and the very sharp fall in the currency that came with that. Investors were very frightened off at that time. They seem to be still hesitant to come back to Turkey, even though the currency is stabilized, even though you have very high, painfully high interest rates. What is it going to take to pull back the long-term investors?
Well, first of all, the 3-year program that we have put in place is on track, is intact, and is delivering. We have inflation, which is still high, but at 40 months low. And over the past 2 weeks, there's been, again, recovery in FX reserves. Investors are actually back. Interest rates are coming down. CDS, the risk premium, has fallen significantly by well over or close to 90 basis points. So actually, if you look at the past few weeks, there's been a recovery in investor sentiment, and that's reflected in financial market conditions.
And very quickly, not so much, though we don't see it so much on the sort of longer-term money, which obviously you would feel, I would assume, more comfortable than the hot money coming in. So we still haven't seen that. Of course,
the program doesn't rely on hot money, but FDI has also picked up over the past 12 months, Turkey is a very large economy with a pretty decent infrastructure and a huge pool of talented people and significant regional integration. So highly diversified economy. So I think when the dust settles, they will be looking at countries that are resilient to global trade fragmentation. They'll be looking at countries that would benefit from stability and prosperity in the region. I think Turkey remains the top candidate in terms of FDI inflows. And, with disinflation, predictability is improving.
Mr. Al-Kuwari, we mentioned Syria. How are you continuing to support Syria? And are you thinking about investment in real estate or other areas where you can support reconstruction?
I mean, regarding Syria, I mean, I just add to the word of Excellency Mohammed, on Syria. Syria is very important. The stability of Syria for the region is extremely important, and the prosperity of Syria is very, very important. And now we have a great opportunity with the presidency and the government in place now to really, to see stable Syria, growing Syria economically. In terms of our role for Syria, I think Syria now, they are building a country from scratch, and they will need all the help they need to, establish the country. They need energy, they need water, they need an economy, they need, infrastructure. So, us and our partners, for example, Qatar and Saudi Arabia, that we announced that we paid their areas with the World Bank. This will unlock around $180 million of support from the World Bank. Also, we're supporting them, again with our partners in Saudi and others, for example, to develop their electricity, to develop their energies. So I think Syria at this stage really needs help to establish themselves, as a country. Going forward, I think with the plans, they have in place, I think it's going to be a great economic opportunity there for investments and for really supporting the Syrian people. Syrian people are very talented. We see them, in Germany, we see them in many other places where they have, contributed significantly to the economies of these countries. So I think Syria's, growth, and development is very important for us. So this is something we're committed to do, to support them.
Just thinking about other regional investments, Kuwait is discussing converting its deposits in Egypt to investments. We saw the UAE do that last year. Is that something that Qatar is considering?
Yeah. President Sisi was in Qatar over 2 weeks ago, and we announced, again, an investment package, with Egypt. So we continue to see Egypt as a great opportunity for investments. In terms of whether to convert the deposits or, to do further investment, this is not something we have discussed, but we continue.
You're not discussing it.
No, it's an option, but it's not something we're gonna. It's one of the options. But in reality, what we see is Egypt is has great opportunities in the real estate, in the tourism sectors, in the manufacturing, and I think from an investment point of view, if we are to do an investment, it has to be in a purely commercial basis with a good return. So this is what, look. But again, the relationship with Egypt, it's very significant. And we view Egypt as a great potential for growth, in the future.
Mr. Ali Ibrahim, the big shift for the kingdom last year was that you became a capital importer, not an exporter, which reflects some of the investments that you were talking about in your other answer. But it does mean you need to attract stable funding, and last year we saw another fall in foreign direct investment. So why is it, do you think, that the FDI is falling, and how are you going to get back on track for that?
So Stephanie, maybe I'll just take a step back and talk about the GCC a little bit overall, and I think tie that to your earlier question. The GCC countries' non-oil economies have grown 3.7% in 2024. That's almost double global growth. And if you look at each country's transformation, there's an acknowledgement that we've been for a while operating below our potential. which means that's operating at a loss, and that loss, maybe in earlier generations can accept that loss in the short term, but compounded, this is not good for future generations. And that's why I think the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Saudi Vision 2030, and other countries in the region have taken it upon themselves to restructure long term. And because of that, the number of opportunities will only keep growing. We're not just moving from consumption to complexity and production and innovation and exports. We're also attracting capital that will help us do that because of the opportunity, and attracting talent at the same time. If you look at what's happening globally, let's say what's happening with US trade policy and its impact, we believe that this is ultimately going to lead to two things. One, we've always talked about what the new form of globalization will look like. Today that answer has been brought forward. Now we can actually start shaping what the world will look like in terms of trade. And number two, the global economy is only as strong as its weakest link. And we've seen in multilateral platforms where His Excellency also participates with other countries in the region, that there's been growing, I'd say, drag on the global economy coming from weak links. I think the response to these policies will only create stronger global players, stronger global economies, from emerging to Europe to whatnot. If you look at things such as the Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive that the EU announced, and how that was a little bit revised recently because of the impact that would have had on the European economy. Some GC companies today are divesting because of that, and we think that still needs to be revisited. I'll come back to your question. Foreign direct investment is a long-term game. It's flows and stock. In the kingdom, we're seeing signals of not just the actual number, but the number of licenses, the number of people coming into the kingdom, number of headquarters being set up, the number of deals that are being discussed and negotiated. In 1 year, we had a very large deal that helped spike that figure and then was challenging afterwards. But our target remains the same, 5.7% of GDP in 2030, around 100 billion in terms of flow in 2030. And we're working hard, 900 reforms to create a better business environment and continuously evolving.
Minister, one of the things that was a challenge, we talk about the weakest link. One of the problems for Turkey was the unorthodox monetary policy for a period of time. Now, my colleagues tell me you're the keeper of the flame for orthodox monetary policy. But it's painful at the moment. You have high interest rates to bring down inflation. Do you worry about the impact on the domestic economy of that? And is it sustainable? Are you going to have to do something to support consumers or raise minimum wage potentially ahead of time?
Well, sorry. We rebuild monetary policy and a strong fiscal position as well. And I think all is set for disinflation. But no treatment is without any side effects. So we are aware of some dislocations in certain sectors. And that's why early this year, we've extended support to some of the labor-intensive export sectors. So we are looking at specific remedies while keeping the program on track. But the essence of the program is to bring inflation down so that we can set the stage for sustainable high growth. So a temporary pain is worth taking, going through. But at the same time, we're looking at short-term fixes to address some side effects.
So, but you won't, if you have, we're seeing potentially factories closing, we have households still dealing with the high cost of living and rising cost of living. Do you see needing to give in to some pressure to support households?
Well, first of all, last year we've created close to 1 million new jobs. That's new jobs added. So manufacturing is obviously struggling, because our key trading partner, Eurozone, is still flirting with recession. So global growth is dismal, and our main trading partners aren't doing that well. So understandably, manufacturing sector is struggling. That's understandable, but manufacturing accounts for only 23% of our GDP. So the rest of the economy, in particular services, is doing really well, continue to create jobs. And households remain in good shape because household debt to GDP ratio is less than 10%. Okay. This is not a leveraged economy. So in that sense, while, again, short-term pressures are there, I think the key is to sustain the program, to deliver disinflation, and that way we lay the foundation for strong, sustainable, long-term prosperity.
And we've run out of time, but I do want to, the title, I want to get back to geoeconomics and also potentially to President Trump. He'll like it. We started and ended with him. But the deals that, and certainly the trade deals that the President is doing or trying to do in different countries, there does seem to be a sting in the tail. You do the transaction, you give good value, and you announce a big number, but he is quite committed to making countries help him take China out of global supply chains. Now, this is a region that's hoping to benefit from continued much higher trade with China than with the US, but also the strong relations with the US. Are you worried, Excellency, that at some point he will force you to choose?
Well, I mean, we enjoy good relationship, of course, with the US and good relationship with China. China is one of the biggest destination of our LNG, trains, and again in terms of imports. We like to work, in balance with both with both powers. I cannot see, the US would reach a stage like will us countries, either me or China. I cannot imagine this. I think what we are going to see, there was a huge there was a huge disruption, in the trade system, what we have seen as a result of the Liberty Day, decisions. But to me, I think these things will settle, and we're going to see a new rules, governing, the trade and the global trade, in general. We have now some dust, we have unsettlement. I know that congratulations, I should say, in the reaching a deal last week, between US and China on interim or transit, tariffs. But eventually, I can see this thing is going to really go away. There has to be really a new rules, for governing this. See, the world, the globe has worked very hard to build a globalization rules-based system, and I cannot just see this going away. There is going to be changing to the regulations, to the rules, how we engage, and the fair competition, unfair competition. But eventually, I think there will be a new regulations. I don't see a problem, I think, dealing with the both places. I think China is an important country, US is an important country, and we'll never get asked, to choose between countries.
Okay, very quickly.
If I may add, I think this administration has demonstrated its leaning in on dialogue. We've seen that with the US-UK deal, with the early indications of US-China potential deal. This region, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the rest of the GCC are always focused on prioritizing dialogue. We heard from His Excellency the Prime Minister today about dialogue. We saw President Trump in Riyadh last week, the result of dialogue, what it led to, including lifting the sanctions on Syria. I think, and realizing that it's part of our interest as economies in this region to connect strongly to international markets, for us to be more resilient and to be more meaningful partners of both the US and China. I think it's in the interest of both that we remain strong partners of both, being part of the dialogue and being part of this new form of globalization that His Excellency mentioned.
I think since we're running out of time, I'm going to let you have the final word, if you'll forgive me, Minister, and thank you all for the good discussion.
Thank you.
Well, we were deeply and are deeply honored by the presence of His Highness the Emir of the State of Qatar for joining us today. Thank you to Stephanie and her esteemed panelists for that insightful session. And thank you to all of our speakers this morning. Ladies and gentlemen, we are excited to announce that the next edition of the Qatar Economic Forum will take place from May the 12th to the May 14th, 2026, so a little under 1 year away, and we look forward to welcoming you back in Doha. Now, before the break, I would like to thank our official partners, the Qatar Ministry of Commerce and Industry, Qatar Media City, our culture sponsor, Qatar Museums, our innovation sponsor, QRDI Council, our premier sponsors, Qatar Investment Authority and QNB, our knowledge sponsor, McKinsey & Company, our participating sponsors, IDA HSBC, Investment Promotion Agency Qatar, Qatar Financial Center, Qatar Free Zones Authority, Qatar University, our airline sponsor, Qatar Airways, our connectivity sponsor, Ooredoo, and our tourism sponsor, Visit Qatar. We would also like to thank the Permanent Committee for organizing conferences at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for all of the support. Now, this concludes our morning block of programming. Please join us for refreshments just outside this room. The program will resume at 12 p.m. And just a reminder, later on stage, Michelle Hussein will be speaking to Elon Musk. So you don't want to miss that. That's happening around 4 p.m. this afternoon. So plenty more to come today in the plenary. I'll see you in about half an hour. See you then.
welcome back to the stage Bloomberg's Jumana Bersechi.
Welcome back, everybody. Well, we begin this next segment with a look at the big risks, inflation, and central banks. But before we get started, a few announcements. So the Wi-Fi network is QEF 2025. If you haven't tried already, that is the network, QEF 2025. We encourage you to download the Forum app as well, and you can view the session and speaker details, navigate the event venue, and network with other delegates. And please be sure to activate the chat function to chat with other attendees, if you'd like to do so. Now, if you have any issues, please visit the app help desk in the networking hub. We would also love to hear from you throughout the forum, and you can actually submit questions and respond to polls by scanning the QR code on the screen right over there. So you just scan that QR code. It takes a little bit of time. You have to fill in a form to get it up and running. That is a good way to participate in some of these Q&A questions and the polls that we will be conducting. Now, you can also engage with us on social media using the hashtag Qatar Economic Forum as well. And now, on with our program. Please join me in welcoming Bloomberg's Editor-in-Chief, John Micklethwaite, for a conversation on the new risk landscape.
Please welcome to the stage Nabil Fahmy, former Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Arab Republic of Egypt, and General David H. Petraeus, Chairman of the Global Institute and KKR Middle East, and partner of KKR, for a conversation with Bloomberg's John Micklethwaite.
Thank you. Very good to have you here. Our subject today is the new risk landscape, and I'm delighted to have two, I might describe you as veteran geographers, to guide us through this landscape. David Petraeus and Nabil Fahmy. I'm going to give you no introductions because people know who you are. Our idea was we're going to begin with the Middle East and then bring in some other things and eventually end up in Ukraine because David has just been there. But let's start, perhaps predictably, with Donald Trump's visit. David, let's begin with you. What do you think? Do you think anything changed because of that visit? And how do you see the Middle East at the moment? And I'll come on to you now.
Yeah, no, I thought this was a very important visit. Mohim jiddan in Arabic, in fact. And it wasn't just the business deals and the enhanced commercial interests and so forth that all took place there. It was also some very serious geopolitical events. The meeting with al-Shara was very significant. Lifting the sanctions on Syria is, again, equally significant. And the discussions at a very timely moment about Iran and the U.S. effort, of course, to try to broker a nuclear deal, but the threat in the background, if that's not successful, that the U.S. has an enormous amount of military power out here right now if needed. And then other geopolitical topics here as well. So it just wasn't all business all the time by any means. That was what took the headlines. I think there were very significant conversations on other issues involving the Middle East at really quite a pivotal moment, with Iran at a real low in decades, I would argue. Hezbollah has been shattered. Hamas obviously dramatically degraded. The Houthis have been hit very hard. And Iran itself, with its economy really doing very poorly. And then this damage to its very sophisticated Russian S-300 air and ballistic missile defense system by the second Israeli response to the Iranian fire on their own territory. So, again, I think this is a very interesting moment here in the region, and I think that a lot of the topics that were discussed are pertaining to that.
Let's just unpack them. Maybe we can look at Syria first. Maybe you go on Syria and ask Nabil, that deal, did you see that coming? And what is the consequence of that? Does that really Do you think the region is now fully behind Syria? There are question marks for instance.
I think by and large that's the case. There is a hope that this individual, who has obviously had a bit of a checkered past, I should note he was in detention in Iraq when I was commanding the surge.
I think you may have arrested him.
He then was released. He went with ISIS, then Al-Qaeda, then force war, all of those. But you know, the question is, can he achieve a government that represents all of the people of Syria and doesn't only provide majority rule but also minority rights being assured as well, bringing together all of these different ethnic, sectarian, even political groupings, and let's give him the best chance that he can have. Let's hope that he can rise to be the leader that could do what I've just said, and let's give him every opportunity so the U.S. lifts the sanctions. Other countries out here have been providing financial assistance, dealing with some of their debts, etc. I think that's a very significant development in the region because obviously it prevents Iran from transiting Syrian soil down into southern Lebanon to help reconstitute Hezbollah, whose leadership has been decimated and his combat power has been dramatically reduced.
Nabil, Syria, do you think that what happened in terms of Syria being brought into the fold, do you think in some ways that also shows the power of what's happened in the Gulf? You know, these were Gulf countries who persuaded Trump to do this.
I think it was very important, but it's the beginning of the story, not the end of the story. Syria, for the first time, came to the Arab Summit in Saudi Arabia first, and now attending a summit with Trump. At the same time, they were asked to do a number of things, but the incentive was put up front. In other words, we will reduce or remove sanctions, and we will provide assistance. That being said, all of those who met the Syrians, be them the Arabs or the Americans, though I'm speaking more on the Arab side, want a better Syria. They don't want an extremist Syria. They don't want, frankly, a revisionist Syria either. So the incentive's out there, but there has to be something to be delivered in response by the Syrians, which is what David just said. It has to be for all the Syrians.
Do you trust the new leadership in Syria?
Trust is a very strong word.
Yes.
But I'm ready to give them the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
Because there's no other way to move this forward, and it serves the interests of Arabs and non-Arabs to solve this in a positive sense. So I would bet, I would invest in it. The word of trust needs a couple of more.
Are you convinced that, I suppose, Turkey, Israel, these people who have had different interests in Syria, let's put it that way, that they are behind this push?
No, I don't. I definitely don't believe the Israelis are behind this at all. I do believe the Turks are favorable about this, and that's why they actually were part of the discussion with the Shah when he was in Saudi. The Israelis, after the change in regime, not only occupied more territory in the Golan, went even beyond the Golan, and have attacked airports in Syria since then, although there have been talks between the Syrians and the Israelis. So the Israelis are not yet there, and Israeli posture in the region as a whole is highly problematic.
We can come back to Israel in 1 second, but David also mentioned Iran. David, do you want to just take that forward? Now that Syria has been brought into the fold, do you think there is a chance of Iran also being brought back into the fold?
That's probably a bit over-optimistic, but there's a chance that there could be a nuclear deal that doesn't have some of the shortcomings of the previous nuclear deal that could enable the lifting of sanctions progressively and so forth as confidence is built, and that could lead to them being a more constructive player in the region than they certainly have been for many decades, noting all the damage that has been done by their proxies in this region and still being done by the Houthis, who have still not resolved the issues there. So I think it's an opportunity that all are working as hard as they can to achieve. You can see the narrowing of the differences between the U.S. position and the Iranian position. No enrichment whatsoever is the U.S. opening. Maybe that ends up being for 3 years, and then you have an opportunity to do something smaller. Again, but you can actually see this deal starting to come together. And assuming Iran then also stops some of the terrible activities that they're doing through proxies in the region, which have been so destabilizing, then you can start to see the contours of something that could be much more positive.
Do you think, I'll come to Nabil again in a second, but do you think that regime change is now slightly off the table with Iran? I remember years ago, Rumsfeld always making the point that you had two contradictory aims in Iran. One was regime change and the other was trying to stop them getting the bomb. And the more you tried to stop them getting the bomb, the more that the population rallied to the regime.
A CIA director learns really quickly that you have to deal with the world the way it is, not the way you'd like it to be. And I never thought that regime change was at all realistic, frankly.
Very interesting. Nabil?
I think it's important to take into account what's been happening years before the visit and immediately before the visit. The Arab Gulf states have actually opened up with Iran, not in a naive sense, but in terms of, we'll talk to you, but there are requirements. This Trump visit, everybody's focusing on the numbers that Trump signed off getting. I'd actually look a bit more deeply. A lot of this is enhanced Arab Gulf capacity building, be that technology, AI, not only there are American companies, but it's actually a lot of it is here. Thirdly, the arms sales. This is all meant to be a response to the Arab Gulf and Arab world desire to be able to deal with most of its problems alone in competition with its neighbors. We understand the world is different. It's not bipolar, and it's a unique unipolar, which isn't defined even by the pole itself. Yes. So we need to do more ourselves. Therefore, when the Saudis negotiated with Iran in China, which started in Iraq, by the way, it's an indication that we're taking things on. So I think the Iran issue is moving in the right direction, but it's not there yet. We need to do more, and to do more, we need to deal with many of the other issues in the region. I'm happy that Trump reached a ceasefire with the Houthis. I'm happy that they negotiated with Hamas to get the American hostage out. Happy that they met the Syrians, of course. But Gaza, Palestine, Gaza, Palestine, Gaza, Palestine, if you don't deal with that, you're going to have many more asymmetrical conflicts in the region than we have now, because we're allowing the rule of force to proceed and prevail over the force of law.
Just a really quick one to highlight something the minister just said. These business deals, the headlines were Boeing, big military. This is technology out here. Again, I'm just become chairman of KKR Middle East. We want to invest in this technology. It's not the traditional fossil fuels only or petrochemicals or the rest of that. There is a huge other economy that's developing out here in states that are promoting innovation, data centers, AI, and all that goes along with that in a very significant way. And the ability to sell the most advanced chips here is one that is also very important.
But this all has geopolitical consequences, doesn't it?
Yes.
Because you now have the Gulf. I mean, Nabil, even when you were foreign minister of Egypt, Egypt might have seemed a more powerful thing than it does nowadays. The Gulf is such a suction of power and money, and as David just pointed out, technology at the moment. Just very quickly, within the Arab world, what are the consequences of that? That basically you have ever more power in the Gulf and slightly less in other parts of the Arab region?
It's not a balance of power if everybody's doing badly.
Yes.
There's no use of that. Frankly, I have no problem whatsoever with many more countries doing better and investing their capacity towards the better good. We all benefit from that. It's a new Arab world. It's different, but there's much more in common among Arabs than there is differences. Therefore, I want to see more success. I have no hesitation whatsoever in applauding anybody who succeeds, provided that we understand that we are all medium-sized countries. So, and at the end of the day, rule of law has to prevail over the rule of force. Otherwise, we will be at a detrimental situation in the long term.
One thing that Nabil mentioned earlier was the word China, because you could argue the other big thing that has changed in this region is China is showing a slightly greater role. It played a role in Saudi Arabia and Iraq. David, from an American perspective, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, there's a bit of a cautionary view of that, needless to say, but let's keep in mind why that happened. It's because the U.S. is now a net exporter in both oil and natural gas. Yes, we have to import some heavy crude for our refineries because we make too much light crude. That's a seismic change, and that's a result of the energy revolution that has been most profound in the United States. We don't need the Gulf oil the way that we used to, the way we're dependent on it, say, in the Yom Kippur War aftermath and the Arab oil embargo and all the rest of this. That doesn't exist, that opportunity. It's understandable, therefore, that there is a focus more on the East. It's also South Asia, of course. It's India, another huge customer for that. So on the one hand, this is natural, it's normal, it's understandable. But, yeah, there's a concern about China's influence creeping into other areas as well.
Come on to Israel and Gaza now. If you heard this morning, I think the UK, France, and Canada all basically said to Israel, if you do more than you're doing at the moment in Gaza, we're going to sanction you. And that is an escalation from the West. I mean, Nabil, first, do you think that will have any effect?
I think it will, and I think it's not enough. Despite the successful visit that Trump had in the Arab Gulf, and again, it was a success. Every day since then, Israelis have killed 100 Palestinians at least. They actually started bombing while Trump was here. That's a message to the Americans as much as it is to the rest of the Arab world. But as an Arab, when we hear that, when we see that, ultimately, our anger increases even though we want to build. My country was the first to have a peace agreement with Israel. We want to build the Middle East, not destroy it. But it cannot be by one country being in complete violation of international law of any consequence. And let me add here, frankly, the successful visit here has raised the threshold by which Trump himself will be assessed in the Middle East. Because you succeeded in doing all of this, now are you going to deliver on the politics? I mean, the real amusing part of this visit, superficially, I look at it much more deeply. Superficially, people see the superpower looking for material gain and the regional powers looking for political gain. Yes. Now, it's more than that. But in essence, America has to deliver on not our interests, but on international order and law. And we are losing our morality, not only in the region, but globally. You cannot come and ask us to take positions based on law or morality elsewhere if you ignore it in our own region.
To be fair to Trump, I think he's a very transactional president who doesn't tend to focus as much on morality as previous ones. But David, I wanted to ask you, do you think that something has changed in the American-Israel axis? There has been, there's some people, very obviously Trump did not go to Israel this time. There is now this sign of other Western powers putting pressure on Israel about Gaza. Do you think something has changed at all?
It's hard to say. There may be something that has changed a bit. The challenge that I've always seen, and again as a former military commander who conducted a comprehensive civil military counterinsurgency campaign in Iraq and somewhat similar in Afghanistan, has been that the strategy that Israel has pursued has not actually achieved their three stated objectives: destroy Hamas, prevent Hamas from governing again, and get the hostages back. Each of those has been only partially achieved. But moreover, that there should be a fourth objective that their military should be trying to achieve as well, which is to provide a better future for the Palestinian people in Gaza without Hamas in their lives. In essence, this is what we set out to do in major urban areas of Iraq that Al-Qaeda had taken over. And by the way, Hamas is an Islamist extremist organization. It is not reconcilable by and large. And that was how Al-Qaeda was viewed in Iraq. You go into Fallujah, Ramadi, Baku, but we told the people in advance, we want to make your lives better by getting Al-Qaeda out of your neighborhoods, out of your lives, and we will then stay and provide security for you with population control measures, biometric ID cards, and rebuilding and restoration of basic services and so forth. And I just don't see that approach here. Clear and leave the way they've been doing, or just pushing populations all over. Hamas is still roughly the same strength they were at the beginning. They're not capable companies, battalions, brigades the way they were. Now they're insurgents. They're guerrillas. And the kind of campaign that is being pursued is not a counterinsurgency. It's more of a counterterrorism where you go in and kill a bunch of bad guys and then leave.
Do you think
so that's difficult, and that's why they haven't destroyed Hamas yet. They've degraded them considerably, but they can't destroy them with that strategy. It's why they haven't kept Hamas from being the guys with the most guns, which gives you governance to the degree that there is any in Gaza. And, of course, the final hostages, there will be really tough conditions for Israel to accept, some of which I don't think they should accept, such as ever leaving the control of the border between southern Gaza and Egypt, under which, in tunnels, and through which, and the Rafah crossing, so much of the materiel and so forth that allowed Hamas to create this incredible subterranean architecture and capability.
Do you think the underlying problem is because that has been a Netanyahu strategy rather than an Israeli military strategy of the people you know well?
I do believe that, and I had long conversations with Yoav Gallant, and I think one of the principal reasons he was probably replaced is that he kept asking, what is the political end state that we're trying to seek? What will it look like? What do you want it to look like? And he's never got an answer, nor have we.
Can I jump in
very quickly, and then we'll jump to Ukraine?
Sure. This is not, we're in military operations, but the objective is political.
Yes.
The Israelis do not want to withdraw from Gaza under any circumstances. They do not want to withdraw from the West Bank under any circumstance. No matter how efficient your military can be, and I, of course, cannot at all challenge what the general is saying militarily, there will be resistance to occupation. So what really is required here, there has to be a clear, concrete commitment to ending the conflict, and how, and we can negotiate the steps to get there. But unless Ayalon, the former head of Shin Bet, was on television recently, and he was asked, what's your response to October 7th? He said, I condemn Hamas, and my response is a two-state solution. And he was asked, are you rewarding Hamas? He said, no, I'm securing Israel. We don't trust each other, and they want a state, and we want a state. We need to resolve not only the crisis, but the conflict.
If you have a political end state, if you understand, let's say it's Hamas or Gaza without Hamas in it, governed by Palestinians for Palestinians, securing themselves, all done progressively, to be sure. This isn't going to happen overnight by any means, and Hamas is going to resist mightily. But if you had that end state, his military could tell him how you achieve it. Those who have experience with civil military counterinsurgency campaigns could tell him how to succeed it, noting that this is probably vastly more difficult than anything, than all of what we did in Iraq put together. The challenges here are staggering. This is the most fiendishly difficult military problem imaginable, but it is not impossible.
On the subject of fiendishly difficult military problems, just one quick last diversion, because there is another hot war on this continent. Ukraine, David, I think you've been there 6 times since 2022. You just come back. Trump this morning basically said, it's a European problem. Let them sort it out. What's your view?
Well, I don't see President Putin in any way eager to stop fighting. What we should have done long ago was provide so much more assistance to Ukraine that they could have changed the dynamics on the battlefield to make Putin realize that he cannot achieve further gains at acceptable costs, and noting that what's acceptable to him in costs is absolutely staggering. The estimates approach now 1 million killed and wounded Russians over the course of the last several years. And I just don't see him willing to negotiate seriously. His demands are essentially regime change, demilitarization, and become part of the Russian sphere of influence, all three of which are totally unacceptable, not just to President Zelensky, not just to the Ukrainian people, but also to Europeans very much, and I think should be for us as well. You cannot reward this kind of brutal, barbaric, unprovoked, naked aggression.
Do you think the Ukrainians, there seems to be some evidence recently that they are doing better on the battlefield? Do you think
I saw what I saw. They're producing 3.5 million drones this year themselves. This is a country that is producing tomorrow's technology for today's wars and employing it incredibly impressively. We struggle to produce sort of today's technology for tomorrow's wars. So what they're doing is truly, it's just absolutely unprecedented and exceptional. How does a nation that has no navy sink 1/3 of the Russian Black Sea Fleet? Aerial drones that find the ships, maritime drones that sink them. They're making the Russians pay for every inch of additional territory that they take. I asked the commanding general of their forces 2 weeks ago, how many drones did you employ on the previous day? He said 6,000. Think about that. They don't have manpower. They're heavily outnumbered. They're heavily outgunned, although, boy, their heavy artillery rounds are plentiful this year. The U.S. pipeline is full for another 4 to 6 months. Europeans are very much coming online, and the progress by the Ukrainians in this unmanned warfare that is the future of conflict has been breathtaking.
So in a circumstance where they do not get peace and they have to hold out throughout the summer, you are reasonably confident they would manage to do that?
Yes, I think they can. They certainly will try to do that, and I think that the likelihood is that they could indeed do that.
You talked about America's image around the world and stuff, and the West's image. Nabil, just to finish on this, when you look at Ukraine, what do you feel about that from this region?
My position personally, and I know many in the region, any occupation of territory by force is a violation of international law. There's no exceptions to that. And I've said that, by the way, to the Russians, myself in Moscow. That being said, the world order was established on two parameters, post-World War II: balance of power, East-West, and spheres of influence that neither side went too far into violating. The balance of power broke, the spheres of influence were therefore violated. Putin told me in 2014 personally, I've been treated in undignified fashion and I will react. He did not say he's going to war. This was February 2014. So I have no problem whatsoever standing up anywhere against use of force. But ultimately, we need to also develop a system in order today, and I think the West missed the opportunity, frankly, because it was so dominant, where it's about a balance of interests, not about a balance of power. Balance of power shift. And today the West is really looking for who are we together or not, and what do we actually want to do. That's even more important than the relations with
compounded, but global economy is already in a slowing down mode. In regard to financial market, I believe that the financial market, we have witnessed, very high volatility in financial market and stock market recently because of the increasing of uncertainties. And unless we have more stable economy, more stable environment, this volatility might, continue. Also, on the other hand, we have witnessed an increased risk of financial instability. I'm not worried about, there is a low probability of a recession in coming future.
And recession probabilities tend to move around with these trade discussions. So there's a bit of a correlation going on there. Durjan, I'd like to turn to you. On Friday, Moody's downgraded U.S.'s sovereign credit rating. You've now got no single U.S. credit or credit rating agency that has U.S. rated AAA. The dollar is back, it's down about 6% this year. 30-year yields are climbing up to 5%. As a strategic investor, has your perception of safe haven assets in the U.S. changed because of the events over the last couple of months?
Yeah, thanks, Jemana, for the question. But first of all, great pleasure to be here in Qatar. Fantastic to be in a place where it's so striking in its vision and also in its implementation of that vision. The question, I think, has come up quite a lot, and I think probably motivated by the events between April 2nd and April 9th, where there was a simultaneous decline in U.S. equities, bonds, and the U.S. dollar, when traditionally the dollar has provided an offset to declining risk sentiments. And that didn't happen this time, and it behaved a little bit more as an emerging market asset. That, I think, generated quite a lot of discussion. I think in conversations with market participants, I think there is talk about an interest in rotation and diversification. And these flows have been quite varied. So in Europe, the flows have been about rotation because there's been a relatively more positive story about Europe coming out of a change in policy, and also the relative value in European assets. In Asia, I think the conversation has also been a little bit different, which is that Asian currencies were a little bit hit harder in the first phase of the tariff announcements. And with some of the better news that was coming out post-April 9th, with the suspension and so on, there was re-rating of the prospects for Asia. That's one. The second, of course, is that there is generally an overweight exposure to U.S. assets from Asian investors, a lot of it unhedged, in fact, most of it unhedged. And so some changes in that sentiment and the read of the direction of the market can cause an outsized reaction, as did happen in the last week of April, where Asian currencies did go up quite sharply. Now, I think the question going forward is, how do you see this? Is this cyclical? Is this structural? And there are elements of both going on, but we have to disentangle the two. On the cyclical side, markets are pricing in slower growth, prospect of higher inflation in the US, and questions over how the fiscal situation will be resolved in the coming months and what the fiscal trajectory will be going forward. And then, of course, the rating agency action is a reflection of that uncertainty about the fiscal trajectory for the US. So it's important to resolve those issues.
Yeah, just as a follow-up to that, the Trump administration doesn't like, quote unquote, governments to meddle too much with their currencies. And in Singapore, it's a special case because you set policy via currency. And I just wonder to what extent that has to be factored into your decision-making in an environment where the dollar seems to be persistently weakening.
So we manage according to a basket, and so it's not primarily the US dollar, so it's quite a diversified basket of currencies that we manage against. We manage it against a band, and we are on an appreciating slope of that band. So generally, the Singapore dollar is appreciating against our trading partners. And there's room within the basket for volatility, so we're not overly concerned about the bilateral exchange rate with any one currency pair. And so there is room for us to manage within that. And generally, over decades, we have built up credibility in our monetary policy regime that market participants will take our signal, and usually the market will bring and help us implement that policy and bring us to where we need to be.
Well, Mary, you and I were on a panel in Davos a couple of months ago with His Excellency as well, and we were talking about the outlook for banking this year, and all of the panelists were very excited about the prospects of having a pro-growth administration, what that would mean for the banking sector. And you actually used the term, we've got a war chest that we're ready to deploy. Have you deployed the war chest? How's it going?
Yes, not yet, but I first just wanted to say I really wanted to thank Mayor Bloomberg and all of the Bloomberg administration here for bringing this to be the 5th annual economic forum. It is a really, really important thing, and in many ways Bloomberg is often in advance of the rest of us. And so, and Your Excellency, thank you so much for allowing us to be with you here today for this very important discussion. JP Morgan has been in the region for 92 years, and we serve across 15 different countries. Right after the great financial crisis, we only had about 100 people here, and today we have 370, and that'll probably be about 500 in the coming year or two. And it's a very exciting place for us to be. And as a matter of fact, I had mentioned we are going to have the JP Morgan leadership team. There's about 700 of us that are going to come and kick off the year of 2026 right here in this great hotel. So I think it is a very exciting time for everybody to be thinking about this, and I think it very much dovetails with all of the conversations that we've had. Actually, the Prime Minister made a great point, which is the World Cup is very much like an IPO of the country, and you can feel it when you're here live and in person. And I think that there's so many things happening in the world where it is a time of great risk, but it is a time of great opportunity, and figuring out how to navigate that is really important. The conversation about the dollar is an equally important one. U.S. exceptionalism has been something that the U.S. is very proud of. But with the world order changing and reshaping itself as people try to figure out where they are, you have $16 trillion worth of foreigners in the U.S. stock market, and just 1% of that is a $160 billion move in the U.S. dollar. So the thoughts of where the dollar goes, you remember back last August when the yen had its short-term movement problems, and the markets had a very unsettling, rattled time period for a day or two, especially over that weekend, August 7th, I think it was. And so these are times where you really have to think about what is the right long-term asset allocation. You have been very strong in your feelings about weathering the storm, thinking about your long-term asset allocation. I don't think rating agencies change what people are going to think about allocating to the U.S. versus Europe versus Asia, and of course here in the Middle East. I think it's what are the opportunities. You look at the GDP growth of the country here, and we've got a 2.5% rate going north. You got a lot of exciting things. You have foreign direct investments, which you have targets of growing quite nicely. And you have to think about that for your overall asset allocation. And you have to think, how many assets do I have that may have gotten overweight in a particular area? U.S. has seen a great appreciation, and you have a lot of people that are overweight that. And so I think there's really just a readjustment of how people think about their overall asset allocation.
A rebalancing of the portfolio as opposed to a structural move out.
Yes.
Since you mentioned IPOs, I do want to ask you, because trading has been, it's been busy. It's been a good quarter for banks because of financial market volatility.
Yes.
What is the outlook for deal making into the second half of the year at this point?
Yeah, I think we're going to have a pretty healthy rest of the year here. So as we all know, we went through the month of April. 3 of the 4 most volatile days in the stock market ever were in the month of April 2025. So these are unprecedented times for those of you who are new into the marketplace. And it's not normal that you have volumes surge to double or triple the levels that they are trading on average. But those are providing opportunities once the markets resettle to think about where things are going. You see a lot of deal conversations happening. We have been very busy on the capital market side, and I think you're going to see the market start to open up here. We have some happening in Asia, some of the largest that we've had in a long time, and we're excited about it. And I think the markets are ready for it.
Yeah. Your Excellency, let me ask you about the inflation outlook. We spoke about growth and the fact that recession probabilities just in the last couple of weeks have started edging lower again. At the same time, I thought it was interesting, the University of Michigan survey came out showing that inflation expectations have been moving upwards. How do you see the inflation outlook, and obviously relevant given the currency is pegged to the USD?
Actually, there have been significant improvement in the inflation in the last couple of years. However, recently, the inflation brought to the table again because of the recent development in tariffs. In my point of view, it's not just tariff, it's about tariff and geopolitical tension. So that's all bring the inflation probability to increase again. Today, we don't know yet what will be the impact of tariff on inflation, what is going to be the size, where it's going to hit, how long it's going to take. This is not clear for central bankers yet. So unless we have data about the tariffs and the impact of tariffs in the prices, central banks cannot move forward. But in my view, that central banks, they have the ability and also the willingness to contain inflation in coming future. But there will be slowdown in inflation improvement in the coming few months until the tariffs, tariffs things get settled.
Where do you think the biggest growth drivers are going to come from? We spoke about some of the short-term uncertainties vis-a-vis the outlook, but if you think about more medium-term, long-term, are there any secular growth areas that exist that are away and dislocated from what we're discussing around trade and the uncertainty of trade?
So thanks. Maybe if I can just take 1 or 2 minutes to come to an earlier point about the dollar and U.S. assets on the structural side. So I think in the transition in the near term, there are some pricing in of some of the new developments, but structurally I think you have to think about the enduring advantages of dollar-based assets. They are the dominant safe assets for use in the financial system, deeply embedded. $28 trillion U.S. Treasury market is fundamental and systemic to to the global financial system, and there is no alternative for this point. Now, structurally, how could that change? I think then it becomes a question of the fiscal trajectory and what market participants, how much confidence or uncertainty market participants project onto that fiscal trajectory. And that becomes important. And also other policies that either reinforce confidence or take away confidence in US-based assets. So that, for now, I think is a reasonably stable outlook. But I think the near term is where we have to look for continued market signals. Now, coming to the question about where growth will come from, in the near term, there is still a lot of front-loading going on. We see that in our data, the hard data coming out of Asia. So it's true in China, it's true in Southeast Asia, that the front-loading or the inventory build-up ahead of tariffs that we saw starting from late last year, carried on into the first quarter, and we're seeing that in the April data as well. But looking ahead, I think it will be a story of two halves. There will be a payback for that inventory buildup, and that's probably going to come in the second half. And we're seeing some of the survey-based data soften already. So, you know, the PMIs have already started to soften. So we'll probably see that come through, but there will be sectors that will continue to grow. Semiconductors, for instance. Now, this is a strategic sector. The US wants to onshore more of it, and we're seeing new investment plantings in the US already growing in the data. So even in 2024, before the tariffs, that onshoring will happen. But nevertheless, global demand is big and rising, and there are many concurrent projects that are in the pipeline for semiconductors. Some of them in Singapore, and several more in our region. But globally, there are many new plantings that have been planned to meet the demand from AI and the numerous applications of AI in all industries. So semiconductors will still be a growth story.
Yeah.
Yeah, I might just add, I think it's technology in general. His Excellency was telling us about a lot of the exciting things he's seeing in the technology space with people he's talking to. And it's just, you cannot quite calculate the impact of what technology is going to do to all companies. So technology itself is going to be a tremendous investment, particularly in the semiconductor and other space, chips, et cetera. But when you think about the power of what AI can do for all companies to reduce costs, potentially to offset whatever tariffs are going to creep into cost increase. I don't know exactly how that offset will work and whether one will come before the other, and that will be a question of whether the consumer can bear it. But if you think about the ability to drive those costs down through efficiencies in these companies, that's why these multiples have stayed so strong across the board. And then you think to yourself, well, which multiples are higher than the others? And you look at just the dichotomy as an example between the US and Europe, and you say to yourself, well, if AI is sort of the equalizer, and it can help all companies everywhere, irrespective of whether the AI technology was made in the US or made in Europe, you could really get a benefit from some of those companies around the world. So I think this is exciting across the board. The question is whether inflation creeps in too fast before that. And a little bit to this inventory point is just something I want to make mention of. There has been a pull forward in purchases, people nervous about tariffs. Let me buy in advance of that. Let me pull forward that inventory that I see. So you've got a little bit that may have been overly frothy, I guess, maybe in these numbers, as you've seen the first quarter, second quarter. You've now had comments from Walmart and the like about how much people will need to pass through to the consumer. Just in the JP Morgan consumer data, we bank half the households in the United States of America, and we have the largest credit card data that we can see on a daily basis. It has not yet affected the very hungry consumer in the U.S. that constantly spends. And so the question will be every day as you watch that, are you starting to see early signs? Are you starting to see a little substitute down and going to a restaurant that may be a little bit cheaper? Flights have softened up a little bit. And so all those things are just on the margin to be watched.
I do want to round up with a question, though, because the fiscal situation in the U.S. has come up. Both of our panelists, His Excellency and MD, has spoken about it too. Do you think that just structurally the world is going to have to get used to higher interest rates, long-term interest rates in the U.S. to reflect the fact that these deficits are wide, the debt load is huge, the servicing costs keep going up. It's the second biggest outlay for the U.S. government. And those budget deficits don't seem to be going away anytime soon. So do you think we will just have to live in an environment of higher yields to reflect that, long-term yields?
Well, I think you've got this dichotomy in the world of central banks who have been raising rates, cutting rates. There is a dichotomy already. You've got the emerging markets that's diverged from the developed markets, and then you have You have places like Europe, very different than places like the US. Each country has to do what is in the best interest of their mandate. Some have dual mandates like the US, which is both inflationary and price stability as well as unemployment, and others just have one or the other. And so as those play out, you get different outcomes of that. I don't think there's one answer that says around the world we're going to have higher interest rates. But those deficits are here, and we have to solve them. We can't keep passing them on to the future generations.
Your Excellency, I'm just going to give you the final word and a few lines about the Qatar economic outlook. And I touched on it earlier with my conversation with His Excellency, the Prime Minister. And we spoke about the World Cup being a sort of IPO moment and some of the bigger plans. But more short term, what sort of an impact are you seeing from global growth uncertainties on the direction of travel for Qatar?
Yeah. Actually, we are part of this world, and what's happened in the world, there is a reflect on Qatar economy as well. As His Excellency mentioned today in his speech that, and his interview, that we are diversifying our economy. Regarding the recent development, the tariffs and other geopolitical tension, in Qatar we have direct and indirect impact, especially in tariffs. So the direct impact is very minimum. There is no major issue with, despite that we've been, there have been imposed on us like 10% minimum tariffs. Because our export to US is less than 2%. So there is no major impact in that area. But my concern is about the indirect impact, which is the decline of energy prices. That could, affect our fiscal budget as well as, current account. However, Qatar and GCC, they have very well diversified their economies. We have an ambitious plan to diversify our economy. We already execute that plan. Also, GCC and Qatar especially, we have built our sovereign wealth funds that can stand and support our economy if needed. But up to now, and comparing to the oil prices at this level, we are in good state. But if it goes below that, then there will be a concern.
Let's see what happens. Panelists, thank you so much for the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you to our speakers for that insightful session. Well, we're actually going to do our first poll now, so please get out your phones. This is going to be fun, hopefully, and scan the QR code behind me. It's going to show up in just a moment. So if you scan that QR code right now, you are going to need to register a few details, so it will take a few minutes for you to be able to do that. If you haven't registered already, it will take a few moments. So please do that now if you pull out your phones and check out those QR codes. And we're going to ask a poll question now. Will the U.S. exceptionalism trade make a comeback this year? U.S. exceptionalism was mentioned on my prior panel, but it is the view that U.S. assets will outperform assets from around the rest of the world, i.e., will U.S. still be able to outperform, will these equity markets outperform other markets? And that was a big theme at the beginning of this year. It came under question a couple of months ago. And so now we're asking you whether you think that theme is going to make a comeback or not. So it's a simple yes or no question. And I'm going to refer to it actually in our next session. So for our next session, I will be sitting down with the CEO of the Qatar Investment Authority for his first live engagement since taking the role. Please, everybody, join me in welcoming Mohammed Al-Sowaidi to the stage. Very good to be speaking with you, Your Excellency.
Thank you.
Your first live speaking engagement since you took on the role, so it's really good to be talking to you. So given this is your first sit down with us in a televised format, I just want to start with your vision for the fund. Walk us through what you are planning for QIA and potentially how it differs from what it was doing in the past, if not at all.
First of all, thank you for having me, and I'd like to share some of the views on QIA. So first of all, we're very proud of what we do. We believe it is really investing for good. The vision of QIA is to accumulate and grow the net worth for the fund, so ultimately be able to add and contribute back to the state and future generations. It's a very noble goal to start with. Also, it's a very big ship. So as we steer the ship, it makes a lot of sense from time to time to revise and think about what you're doing and how to improve it, especially when you think of markets that are very complex and environments that are ever-changing. I wouldn't say really we have major movements or strategic movements for the fund. I think we have a very strong fund and have been in it for 15 years. But I think with time we're increasing our pace when it comes to specializations, which areas, which priorities to focus on, and how do we invest in human talent internally. So we have the best human talent and the best strategic and agility to be able to continue to become an outperformer in markets that are quite complex to navigate through.
Last week, you made the announcement that QIA are looking to invest $500 billion in the U.S. over the next decade. So quick back-of-the-envelope math, that's about $50 billion a year if you just divide by 10. Before I ask you about what those investment opportunities are, how does that figure actually compare to what QIA was investing in the U.S. in prior years?
It increases the pace for sure. So I think some years probably increases by double, and some years probably by more than double what we've been doing for the past 5 or 6 years. As you know, His Highness indicated openly that a lot of the additional reserves sales that's coming from the LNG expansion will be routed to the Future Generations Fund. And since we're a beneficiary of that guidance, it's very important for us to think organically, how do we grow? And U.S. is 60% of the available trading markets in the world. So it makes sense that most of it will go to the U.S. market. We also believe in the robustness of the U.S. systems, the growth perspective that the U.S. enjoys. So we'll continue being there, but it's definitely a major uplift. So part of the key mandates that we have now in QIA is how do we prepare ourselves and systems to be able to grow systematically, significantly in size, both in terms of people, but more importantly in terms of how to continue to be and thrive to become a very excellent investor in those markets.
Yeah. On that note,
but it's a major uplift for sure.
It is,
and it's a huge amount of quantum of capital. What our evaluation now is that how do you position ourselves, how to become efficient investors, and what areas and themes to focus on.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you about that. Let me just bring up the poll results because we asked the audience to get involved with this. So, will U.S. exceptions in trade make a comeback this year? Only 54% of people say yes. The rest say no. So, not everyone is as optimistic on a relative basis as some of the other people that we've spoken to in the room. Let me ask you from QIA's perspective, and of course you have a more long-term view on the U.S., obviously. Where are the areas that you want to get involved in the U.S.? What are the biggest themes you're interested in right now?
There are themes, I would kind of classify them as it's a very general question, but if I make it a little bit narrower and think about the U.S. and major industries within the U.S., they tie in global themes as well. So one of the key themes we're spending a lot of time on is digitalizations in areas that add value. So as you think of digitalization, and AI is definitely in the center of it, and we're looking for how do we spend time and which industries do you invest in? Digital investors becoming more and more digital or AI enabled, that actually adds value to economic growth. And this, we think, could be time because you have a strong hardware power and you have a strong software power as we see, and it's accelerating significantly. But a very important, another element, which is changes in demographics. More AI-enabled softwares and applications may improve the people's lives and actually increase productivity in times where demographics are decreasing everywhere around the world. So this, I would say, is a major theme. So digitalization and AI-related technologies. And we think of it technology, but in reality, a lot of the businesses coming up and claiming to be technologies that are actually cannibalizing a lot of traditional businesses. A second very important area, which is also U.S. is a big part of it, given the current policies that administration is pushing for, is how do we think of the world from a globalization to deglobalization or fragmented economies.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look into the data over the past 20, 30 years, this has already been happening. So to share some stats, the U.S. amount of trades with China was about, so U.S. amount of trade with China was about 20%, 22% if you think of 2018 or so. This year it's around 13%. So it's a major reduction of the amount of trading relationships and capital on goods between China and the U.S. And if you look at from different perspectives, so if you ask and say, what is emerging markets doing with each other, you'll notice a significant increase in amount of trades. Yeah. So another important element to the U.S. is how do we take advantage and position ourselves on the areas of supply chain reconfigurations in light of also what's happening with the U.S. around trades and encouraging, establishing trades. Also, if you look into the data in the U.S., I cannot recollect exact years, but I think probably toward the late 90s or mid-90s, 30% of the U.S. GDP was attributed to industrial activities, while now it's around 10% or so.
Yeah.
So the U.S., in addition to supply chain configuration and trades, logistics and ports and things of that sort of infrastructure, you also may have a need for further industrialization within the U.S. in a world that will become a little bit more kind of globalized. The third area, which is not really a theme, but I think there is a lot of things changing on the correlations and underlying risks and of various parts of the markets. So as you've seen, there is significant reduction in terms of a high level of volatility and significant reduction at some points between the correlation relationship between equities and bonds, for example. Mm-hmm. In a world where there is more also, again, a trade and related and things of that sort, you expect to see more foreign currency volatility, more interest rate volatility. So the third one, I would say, more tactical. So one is around digitalization and technology. I think it's a key aspect across industries. The second one around supply chain in a new world. The third one is around how do you become tactically aware and agile when it comes to your portfolio and asset management policies.
Well, let me ask you about your tactical allocation. Are you reducing exposure to any asset class?
We are thinking hard in terms of underlying risks. So the interest rate environment was much higher past few years. Now we're thinking is how much should we allocate to fixed income, for example.
Interesting.
Right? In a world where there is a lot of challenges, you may end up investing in businesses that are not necessarily fixed income or credit related, but they have similar attributes and could offer you more growth. So to answer your question tactically, I think we're revising very deeply how much we should have in fixed income as a conservative asset class. And we're thinking very deep also some of the traditional asset classes that we have, whether we need to increase or decrease some of those asset classes as well, like infrastructure and real estate.
Let me ask you a question about your AUM, because His Excellency earlier in the morning talked about the fact that new inflows are going to be coming in. What is your expectation for how big the fund is going to be by 2030?
We haven't run the final model, I'll be very honest with you.
Roughly?
We haven't run a model, honestly. I don't really have the exact number. Also, it will be bad because they may say a number and then underperform as a fund and not meet it. Because it would have to come from two factors. First, investing wisely to outperform and get there, and then the inflows. So I don't want to hold myself accountable for underperformance.
Okay, but assuming that the fund continues to grow in size, which I think is a fair assumption, we don't have to pin down a number, is that going to change the way you invest? Because you will have to invest for opportunities that can give you scale?
Definitely. So QI performance has been strong, and we expect with some of the things we're doing internally for it even to be stronger. We strengthen it through specializations and focusing on the right areas and constantly revising and thinking about our asset allocation policy. But as the fund size grow in size, this will push us to have even longer duration on the portfolio. So we can take longer term bets and themes and industries and specific technologies or other businesses and take advantage of the liquidity premium to underperform. So I don't expect major change in the style, but I think it will be more refined and we'll focus on areas to take advantage more of our ability to have a larger fund and also think of longer duration.
Fair to say perhaps a bigger emphasis on direct investments then in the future?
That is Qatar, you mean?
Yes.
I mean, we have a good emphasis on direct investments. A lot of the partners we have been and think of globalization. A lot of them think about supply chain solutions, decentralizing industries. So from our mandates, it's our responsibility to pass them along and be the kind of holding the hand and try and introduce them to the domestic stakeholders to encourage them to think of Qatar as a destination. And starting as an investor is also good because they've seen when we promise, we stick to our words and we stood beside our partners in good time and difficult times. So it resonates when they think that you're inviting them to have business in Doha.
Yeah. More and more funds have been looking into opportunities in private credit, and maybe I should link that back to what you were saying about fixed income and finding opportunities between public and private. In that space, do you think it has become more challenging to find decent investment opportunities simply because so many funds have an interest in those assets?
Definitely a crowded market compared to 7 or 8 years ago. We started in scale in the United States, I would say 6, 7 years ago, when we thought it was an interesting time. COVID enabled us also to do more. It's becoming a very crowded market, I would say. And the other problem with private credit is you may underwrite a private credit thinking it's actually a credit piece, but when issues come by, you realize it's more underwriting. So our strategy when it comes to private credit is to focus on managers and to go with scale, and many times actually be on a pilot seat. So we have kind of an SMA accounts with a lot of the managers we have, so we can put the dial, which is more risk or less risk. I'm very proud of the team we have also within QIA doing that.
Yeah. Earlier on, you were talking about one of the thematics, and that is digitalization, artificial intelligence. Interesting that when President Trump was in the region last week, many partnerships and deals were announced. And I wonder whether that's also an avenue for QIA to be involved too, in terms of securing and working with U.S. companies for the advancements of AI technology in the region and in Qatar. Obviously.
Yeah. We're investing a lot in the U.S., extensively. So we started investing in data centers and some of them in AI, in the AI and hyperscale space about 10 years ago. So when we started originally, we were hesitant really about the asset class. When we developed familiarity after a couple of years, we did deploy in size. I'll tell you, we're very happy with what we've done early because those things are very valuable now. Because when you do things early, you have the ability to negotiate better terms. So we've have access to a lot of assets in the U.S. Overall, we've invested and have exposure to about 5 gigawatts as a QIA. And we've done it systematically with discipline. When it comes to AI, which is the applications on top, we've also been active, both in the hardware, both in the infrastructure software. So we've invested this year a significant ticket, 500 million in Databricks. And also we've been active on the application size. We've been hesitant to come the application size of things for a while, but have been quite active this year as things materialize. We also invested significantly in XAI. We thought they have a superb focus on a fully integrated system and solution. So we've been active from last year, and we also redeployed again with them this year. So we've been active. In the U.S., we also have a good track record. I think one of the things with the Mr. President Trump policies is encouraging, as a lot of people trying to encourage investors to come to the United States. And I think they come to the realization that capital coming from an entity like QIA or Qatar is a very welcomed capital because it's quite commercially driven and speaks to the same values of entrepreneurs.
Yeah, well, that's a good place to leave it. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time with us today. Fascinating to get insights on how your vision is for QIA.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Charging a discounted reciprocal tariff of 34%. In other words, they charge us, we charge them less. So how could anybody be upset?
change the way trade works around the world.
All businesses, big and small, will suffer from day one.
Canada will be implementing 25% tariffs against $155 billion worth of American goods.
Please welcome to the stage His Excellency Bandar Ibrahim Abdullah Al-Kuwari, Minister of Industry and Mineral Resources for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and Nadi Al-Saleh, Chairperson of Agility, and Leiti Tutwe, Vice Chairwoman of Vingroup, for a conversation with Bloomberg's Francine Lacroix.
Well, thank you to everyone in the room, and thank you so much to our panelists. Now, we have 18 minutes, so we have to get to work to talk about tariffs and trade and building resilience in either your countries or your companies. Now, I love this panel because it's a good mix of private sector and public, so we have it from all angles. Minister, let me start off with you, because you're really, you oversee major Vision 2030 initiatives, including the push to create a homegrown metals and mining industry. How does Saudi Arabia look at its suite of initiatives with, industrial power on what to prioritize to stand the test of time, given the changes, not only in technology, but also energy and geopolitics?
Thank you. It's a great pleasure to be here in Doha, and I would like to, first of all, congratulate the organizers. We need more and more events to talk about what's happening in the region. I think it's clear to say and easy to say that today in our vision, Saudi Vision 2030, diversification of our economy is key. And definitely mining and industry are both areas where we can see great opportunities that will enable us to achieve this. If we look at the progress that we have been able to make in the last 7-8 years since we launched our vision, we have been very consistent in the way we build the initiatives, the way we execute, and today we are actually seeing a lot of results on the ground. And we were talking backstage about, it's easy to have a plan, and I think a lot of people can build great plans. But what counts at the end of the day is the ability to execute. And today, I think, I like to call it in Saudi mastering the art of execution, because execution is a lot of art. If the plan is a lot of science, and the art of execution is really being able to show all stakeholders, especially when we talk about industry, for example. It's not enough for a country to decide to have industry as a main component of its economy. There has to be a lot of engagement by private sector who are willing actually to put up the investments. Mining is a great example also of something that's definitely new, and the art of execution is really to address what kind of challenges or concerns do these investors who are interested in investing in these sectors would like a government to look at and to solve for. I will just give a quick example in mining. What we see in mining is not only the resource, which we have a lot of, but what is the main important element of mining or unlocking the mining sector is the regulatory framework. And we have been able to introduce, I would claim, one of the best, if not the best, mining investment law globally today. It's not me saying this, it's really major players in the industry talking about it, which helps solve for one of the most critical elements of investment in mining, which is time of licensing. And we have been able to reduce the licensing time from global average of 3 to 5 years to less than 6 months.
And Minister, I want to come back to exactly where you're investing, but overall, I mean, it's not easy being in the business world right now because it's so tumultuous and it changes so fast. So Hannadi, in an era of rising interest rates, deglobalization, supply chain shocks, and economic trends, frankly, that are changing week by week. What are you most concerned about in terms of, you know, the capital that's being deployed around the world, but also cross-border?
So I think you're absolutely right, and I think about agility and where we're focused on. So we're focused on investing in operating in businesses that touch the entire value chain of the supply chain, whether it's industrial real estate, freight forwarding, and this has been impacted not simply now, but over the past few years. So if you think about the past few years and you think about trade, trade is no longer about comparative advantage or pricing efficiency. It's really become a matter of national and technological sovereignty and security. So that changes the dynamic quite a lot. And what you see over the past few years, you see countries that are geopolitically friendly trading more. In the past 3 years, they've traded close to $600 billion worth of trade in their own sectors. What does that mean? That covers around 60% of global trade. What does that imply for a lot of people, especially as companies? That means you see rises of new manufacturing hubs, new logistics hubs. Saudi Arabia, as an example. Qatar, as an example, you know, from the top 10 cargo hubs around the world. So what does that mean as a company? It means you need to really change and shift and diversify. You need to focus on diversification, making sure you produce and your supply chain is focused on your end consumer market. And not just that, you need to think about digitization and how do you remain nimble and agile at the same time.
What does that mean for Vingroup? Again, you have different sectors, you have different exposures. So how do you think about the biggest challenges, but also where do you see the biggest opportunities?
Well, just in case you don't know, Vietnam got 46% reciprocal tariff. So that was, it came as a surprise to us. But I think we've been dealing with it. We've been having the discussion, and I think we're going to come out of it all right. I think in our sector, we got, in automotive, we make EVs and we export to the US as well. We got an extra 25% tariff as well. So dealing with the challenges, dealing with the political uncertainties and high interest rate and all that. But I think for us, it's important to be agile and flexible, and that's how we've been doing, right? We've been making partnership in time like this. Partnership, bilateral or regional partnerships are important. Trust is important to in partnerships, and then we build our own capabilities. So luckily, during the COVID time, we had to build our own vertical, supply chain in Vietnam for ourselves. So that came in handy during this time. So I think I would say that we just need to be agile and need to anticipate that there will be continued changes, and we just need to adapt to it. We've been growing as a group. We've been adding more businesses. We're adding renewable energy. We're adding infrastructure to our group, and we continue growing because we anticipate that there will be changes.
Nadi?
Yeah, no, I think you bring up some really good points, and just building on being agile, thinking about digitizing your supply chain, that is a huge opportunity. So if you think about, the application of AI in your supply chain today, but, when you look at supply chains, any supply chain that is digitally enabled can actually grow your revenues by 3% during any economic turmoil. Not just that, companies today only have around, limited visibility, real-time visibility. 10% of companies around the world have real-time visibility in their supply chain. So by applying digitization and AI, the thing is you can improve your inventory by around 15%, you can reduce costs by another 20%. So those are opportunities which everybody should really be aware of and heed to.
Minister, where does Saudi Arabia's mining industry, where is it looking to invest? And again, if you're looking at major deals, have they had to take a back step because of the global volatility?
No, I think it's on the contrary. I think today, if we look at many of the sectors that we target, both in mining and in industry, we are actually solving for many global challenges, especially with supply chain. We underestimated, I think the global community underestimated the need of minerals, and today we are actually in race with time to ensure that we have the right quantities of minerals and metals to satisfy the global need in energy transition, in automation, in technology, and defense, and so on. We have created the Future Mineral Forum, which addresses these challenges. It's a platform where we bring governments, we bring private sector, large mining companies, financial institutions, academia, technology providers, to look at ways of how can we introduce the right technologies, for example, to ensure that we expedite exploration, but also refining. How can we ensure that there are enough investments going to different assets to ensure also they are operating? How can governments today work together collectively to ensure that it's a seamless supply chain with regards to from the resource to the refining to the downstream and so on? And if we look at global resources of mining for today, Africa, Middle East, and Central Asia, they represent almost 33% of the global mining reserves, but yet only contribute to 6% of the output, and that's a huge gap. So the intention of also Saudi Arabia, through this platform, to ensure there is a right dialogue between governments to ensure that we help different countries. So that's an area where the more we improve efficiency, the more we introduce new technologies, the more we promote the right behaviors in mining, then the outcome will be more investment flowing to the sector, which will definitely help solve for the supply chain challenges.
Yeah, but Minister, Saudi Arabia is also trying to do more localized production, for example, because, for example, for autos, right, or on the Red Sea coast. So do you see more localized production to be, I guess, a little bit more hedged in these global supply chains?
Definitely, and I think the localization strategy that we have is not only to address our resilience or national security, which is a main component. I mean, I would not also underestimate the importance of the resilience, but it's more than that. It is really capturing a new value. Today, in manufacturing, for example, scale is becoming less important because of new technologies that are being introduced. I think His Excellency Faisal talked earlier about how can we look at the future jobs of the workforce. And today in manufacturing, in mining, and many of the sectors we intend to build in Saudi are all built on new technologies. How can we ensure that while we are growing our economy, we are creating the right jobs for our people? We are actually also contributing to not cater for the local market, but for the region and globally. So automotive is a sector that we have been waiting, to attract for many years. Our vision is a great enabler that brought this sector to Saudi. We are the largest country exporting cars with no local manufacturing, and I think it's the right move. And if you look at what we did as a bet in automotive, betting on EVs is showing you how we think as a country we are investing in the future.
And you've had to, I mean, we've mentioned this, right? The fact that actually your supply chains have changed quite quickly. I think VinFast has pivoted away from markets, including the US and Canada, due to the tariff situation. Like, how do you see, for example, car makers and automakers, evolving?
Well, I think for the automotive industry for the last 5 years, we've been facing challenges after challenges from supply chain. Previously, you heard about the shortage of battery, semiconductor, to getting to today when disruption in supply chain. But we built a supply chain in Vietnam. So I think I just shared with His Excellency Minister before. We started with almost zero over 7 years ago in Vietnam with no supply chain. When we launched the first car 21 months later, the local contents about 11-12%. Now we're at about 65% and keep increasing to about 80%. So it takes a little bit of time, but you just have to build the supply chain. And COVID taught us that we couldn't rely on external forces. So again, partnership and reaching in, like strengthening yourself, is important in the current time.
And Henada, you've mentioned, these shifts and changes. I guess the difficult part is knowing whether this is a new normal for a very long time, or whether some of these, tariffs are just a passing phase.
I think you talk about the new normal. What's interesting is if you look at first quarter earnings, the word uncertainties jumped close to around 50%. And it is uncertain. Is this the new normal? We don't know, but this is where you need to hedge yourself for any situation. You talk about manufacturing and also localization, and you see this trend taking place over the past 10 years where around 70% of corporates are actually reshuffling, to a certain extent, friendshoring, localizing all of their manufacturing and their supply chains in order to hedge potential disruptions and uncertainties and challenges. I think in any case, we don't know if it's a new normal, but in all cases, you have to prepare yourself with a strong balance sheet, the right talent, and digitization.
And to you both, I'll ask you in a second how basically your business strategy has changed and will change. But Minister, how do you support chief executives or chairpersons that have to deal with this kind of big challenges?
Well, I used to be in the private sector for 25 years, so I can tell you I never expected the role of government to increase as it is today. It's without government really helping private sector to capture different value, it will be very hard to see the growth in the private sector. It's also the role of governance today when we look at the interruption that has happened from the trade issues, without governments really lobbying and helping and moving really towards helping private sector to be at least getting some certainty. But if we take today different technologies, AI or robotics or even logistics, without connectivity, they will never be enabled. And connectivity needs to be led by governments through the infrastructure investment, through the regulation. Cybersecurity is a big challenge. It's a concern, without really addressing the concern of private sector of how to deal also with the information age and how to deal with different technologies and making sure that they are well secured. It would be very hard to see private sector being encouraged to invest in new technologies. So I think the role of government today in infrastructure, digital and physical, in human capital development, and in setting the right policies that are very, I would say, proactively addressing the different needs and challenges of the private sector, it will be very hard to see private sector flourish. And this is why really we see Saudi Arabia getting a lot of attention from global players and investors. Last year is a great demonstration of the growth we have done. 2024 was the record high export of Saudi Arabia, non-oil export. We grew from 16% contribution non-oil export to 25% contribution of our GDP in non-oil export. The non-oil, non-petrochemical growth of exports was 9% last year. So this is just showing how the right investment, the right policies, the right also engagement with private sector is giving us a lot of leverage, giving us yield. I was talking to Hanadi before. I had dinner with several CEOs a few days ago, and one of the large companies, Al-Mara'i, is a big food company in Saudi, a big, strong brand. He turned to me and he said, look, we have been getting a lot of support from the government in the last few years. We are always asking you for things. Now I want to ask you, what can we as Al-Mara'i do for you? This is just showing you the kind of appreciation that we are getting from private sector, and we will continue to do that because we are keen in having Saudi Arabia perceived as the right place to invest in manufacturing, in mining and logistics.
Given this shift, Nadia, how do you see your business strategy actually being reshaped in the next 3 to 5 years?
I think it's really, from our perspective, because our roots, even though we're a global company today, our roots is started from the GCC, and it started on the back of, as you talked about, public-private partnerships. From our perspective, we'll continue doubling down on it. We'll continue doubling down on our investments in core markets in which we're strong in and which have that consumer demand, natural resources in order to be able to grow in.
And Tui, how do you see business, changing in the longer term?
Like I mentioned before, our organization, Vingroup, we're the largest private conglomerate in Vietnam, but we're still growing like crazy. We started getting into the sector that we never thought we would be in before, renewable energy, infrastructure, railway, and all that. And our country, Vietnam, just is also changing rapidly. Like the government is optimizing itself, reducing people, merging the ministry, merging the provinces, and becoming more and more efficient. So leading the way, and also relying, vocally announcing that relying more on the private sector to grow. So we feel like we have in challenges, there are opportunities. There are a lot of opportunities for private sector, for corporates to grow. So I'm quite positive about the future. I understand that there are uncertainties, there are issues, but very, very positive about the future.
Well, thank you so much. A big round of applause, please, for my wonderful panelists on doing global business in difficult times. Thank you.
Thank you.
Morning sessions, everybody. Please join us for lunch just outside this room. We also invite you to attend one of our lunch breakout briefings starting at 1:45 p.m. at the Fairmont Hotel. Where to invest right now, sponsored by QNB in breakout room 1. The new reality of globalization and trade, that is breakout room 2. We also invite you to explore the activations and exhibits taking place throughout the forum space, showcasing the creativity, heritage, and talent of Qatar and the region. Event staff are on hand to direct you. And if you're interested in a complimentary 3-month subscription to Bloomberg News, scan the QR code on the screen to learn more. Now, please join us back here at 3 p.m. for our afternoon program, which includes sessions on aviation, banking, and a live virtual interview with none other than Elon Musk. We'll see you then.